hold on a second. What about the recording? Are we?
You gonna call him on the?
We don't do that special
Landline.
recording anymore. We just.
He can call into it, or we can call out on that. Just hit the phone button.
I'm talking about where you record the meeting, the minutes.
It's on.
It's on. Okay.
What number you want to call?
We have personnel on here, so we'll talk about SRO at the beginning. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
You got stuff to do, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
What number you want to call?
I saw what you had to
Who's gonna call?
Tout that.
Huh?
Hey,
He's gonna call
Stan,
you.
Yes, sir.
at the end of the meeting, we need to talk about two young ladies on the basketball
573-5322.
team that have been nominated for McDonald's All-Americans.
Okay.
It was on Metro News. 2 out of 4 of them, 2 of the 4 students are from our county.
Hello.
All right. Good deal.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
I'm here.
Can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
You know his wife's also a nurse. She gave a lot of vaccines for herself, so they get
We're good to go.
Exactly.
Good morning. Chair calls this special meeting of the Summers County Board of Education to order. It is 9:04 a.m. and it is Friday, February the 19th, 2021. Regarding roll call, let the minutes reflect that 4 members are present. Mr. Brogan is joining us by phone. At this time, Mr. Angel, would you please do invocation, pledge of allegiance?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to gather here today. Dear Heavenly Father, we especially want to remember those that are recovering from COVID and those that have lost loved ones. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with each family there, watch over and protect them and provide their needs. Dear Heavenly Father, we also ask that you watch over each one of our students in Summers County and their families and our service personnel and our teachers. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask you to watch over them and keep them safe. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a special meeting. Superintendent Worrell felt like there was a lot of information regarding all the things we have going on that we needed a special meeting, and it will serve as a work session. We're going to be working on a lot of things here for a while. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take. Having said that, we have item 3, approval of agenda and adjustments. Are there any adjustments? Well, that being the case, Chair moves this board approve the agenda as presented to us by the superintendent.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by the chair, second by Mr. Angel, that this board approve the agenda as presented by the superintendent. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Minutes should reflect by 5 votes in the affirmative, this board approved the agenda. We now come to item 4, the work session for updates and discussion of the following topics. I see item 1 is personnel. Superintendent Wardle.
Before we go into personnel, I thought it'd be good for everybody to see the board up here, and I'm just going to slowly go through it, and you all have a copy at your desk there. Summers County Schools, this year we've gone with the mantra, accepting the challenge. Probably should be plural challenges, but anyway, the challenge could be anything that comes our way, and I just wanted to show some success and some struggles all in the same motion here of all the things that have taken place. Since July 1, the board had to hire a new superintendent. The county has also been under a review from the State Department. We've had re-entry toolkits and constant changes with the CDC guidelines. CARES money, we need to spend it in 2 years. Now we need to hurry up and spend it today because we're getting more CARES money. I know people might say, well, are you complaining? No, it's just constant changes that are happening to us. Ordering PPE supplies for all schools, changing the school calendar to Labor Day to Memorial Day, color-coded map, school closure, relocating our middle school to the high school. And that's for not only the students, but our staff as well in the community. The next one says virtual, remote, and in-person learning, creating Bobcat Connect, CEFP, feeding the students year-round, providing educational options to our parents and our students, keeping the LPN program going, working with DHHR, quarantine or not to quarantine, focusing on standards to be taught by grade level, and that's working with Dr. Steve Edwards. The School Building Authority, updating Board of Ed policies, streamlining our school system, job descriptions and duties. We had a scare with Charlie, AKA Lazarus. He's down, but he's not out. And that's not to be funny, but also, if you know Charlie, he came back full blazes. So we appreciate him being back with us because he's a top team player for us. Vaccines, and then the last one, just to be a little facetious, did we mention during a pandemic? I think people have to realize and be reflective and say, look what this county has taken on. And I know other counties have too, but I just wanted people in the community to know there's been a lot of things that have been thrown at our teachers, our service personnel, the board, and anybody else that's part of the school system, which is mainly the whole county. We have tried to be transparent and open to new ideas and suggestions, meanwhile focusing on trying to educate our kids. So I just wanted people to understand we've taken on a lot. Now we gotta just keep going with the flow and keep being constant with change. The only thing that does stay the same is change. I don't know if that's a song or not, but the only thing I can say is that's what went through my mind as I was typing this up last night. There's probably a few items I forgot to mention there, but I thought it's good for you to look back and say, look what all we've been dealing with. And I just want everybody to know that we have a sign out there that talks about putting kids first. And I would say the people in this room have done a good job with that. And since we're talking about kids, it ties in with personnel. So what Lauren and I are gonna do is talk about personnel, but since Sheriff Ferris is here and he has plenty to do, I'm gonna just bump him to the top because he has a badge there and he's the biggest guy in this room. But I also know that when I contacted him and then he contacted me, we talked about getting an SRO program here, a school resource officer. In our wish list, we'd like to have one in each school, but we're gonna start with one, and I want him to walk you guys through his experience with school resource officer in his past life, and then what he sees as we move forward in our county with a school resource officer. And one of the issues is funding, but we can answer that question on how we're gonna fund that source because people need to know, okay, you're taking on this position. How is that gonna look with our school funding formula and how are we gonna manage this? Because the biggest thing is, talking with Mr. Ferris here, is we'd like a commitment for 5 years. And I wanna hold to that commitment because I think the school resource officer program is great to have in the school system, not as a situation that looks punitive, but to work together in harmony with our kids. And also, Mr. Ferris, we're gonna get him a key fob so he can come into any building whenever he wants. And he won't charge us a dime just to stop by and say hi or eat lunch with the kids and just to check on them. And I also was excited to hear he also has a program on Saturdays where we can get kids that come in to talk about law enforcement and the fire department. So that connects with our CTE programs and our career programs. And we just would like to have him have a moment to talk to you guys. And I told him that you guys can pepper him with questions. And I'll jump in if I need to save him or not. But I think he can handle his own, and I'm just excited to be working with our new sheriff in town. So, Mr. Ferris, I'll let you have the floor.
I'll stand if you don't mind. I always like to stand when I talk. Wasn't able to prepare a lot for this meeting, but I know most of the material off the top of my head. The school resource officer. I was a sergeant at Princeton Police Department, and I was actually responsible for starting their program there. It's an asset that you can call any teacher at any of the Princeton schools that we have a school resource officer. They'll sing their praises to anyone. It makes a teacher's job so much easier to have a police officer on campus. we serve a lot more purposes that the public doesn't see that it helps out the teachers. A big thing, you have a student, let's say teenager, 17, 18 years old, that gets suspended from school. Parent can't come and get them. They're sitting there waiting until the end of the day. What we've done at Princeton, and what I would allow my deputies here to do, if the parent gives permission, we could transport that child home so they're out of the campus, they can start their suspension process. That's another big thing. Another thing is drugs. If you have a uniformed officer on campus, it's not going to eliminate drugs by any means, but it is going to deter maybe someone selling drugs in the bathroom or out in the parking lot. If you have a uniformed officer on the campus being proactive. And if this does happen, I promise you, whoever I put down there, they're going to be held to the highest standard of proactivity. I want them engaging with children. I want them to be seen. I don't want them to be feared. I want them to build a relationship with the children. That way, if they have a bully issue or there's a drug issue or, Lord forbid, someone brings a weapon to school, that they feel comfortable to go to that officer and tell them. There's another thing that I wasn't able to talk with the superintendent that is looking very promising. I talked to a corporal in Logan County, and he's actually the coordinator for the southern part of the state for school resource officers. There's actually a federal grant that just came down the pipe for school resource officer position. So this probably isn't going to happen by, let's say, September, but I'm going to start this process. I've actually already started the process for this position. And I know we're going to start hopefully with one, but if this grant goes through, maybe we can even get to 2 or 3 down there. My goal would be to have one at the high school, middle school, and have one that could rotate between every elementary school in the county. Because the elementary age, I always say, get them young. Get them around police officers, get them familiar to where they're not scared of us. Because I can't, and that's another big pet peeve of mine. If you have your child out and you see a police officer, never tell them that you better be good or that I'm going to turn you into the police. That kind of mentality I like to get away from. The more we're around children, the better. And he talked about the Police Explorers program that I plan on starting in the summer. As long as COVID keeps going the way it is, I think we'll be able to start doing that by summer. And that's for elementary age school students, but that program, I was also part of that at Princeton. It's a great program just to get them familiar. We take them out and do, we let them lift fingerprints, run canine tracks with our dogs. We brought in a helicopter before and let the helicopter land, and they do a little tour of the helicopter, our cruisers, crime scene photography. I mean, you name it, they do it. And there's actually like a curriculum for that they give us books and everything for, and all that's paid for. That's not out of my budget or the school's budget. All that's paid for by federal money. But I'm excited to be working with the Board of Education. I've always had a good relationship with the board in Mercer County, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys. If you ever need my cell phone number, I answer 24/7. My wife's not happy about it, but I always answer day or night. I knew that whenever I took this position that I needed to be available, so don't ever hesitate to give me a call if you need something. But I thank you for inviting me today, and if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask.
Is Mr. Lester still working with you?
Yes, he's actually 4
He's
weeks from
State Police
graduating.
Academy?
Yep, 4 weeks left.
Okay.
Looking forward to getting him back.
He ran radar up Jumping Branch.
Yes, sir.
I know he couldn't issue any tickets because he hadn't been through the training or anything, but he pulled over 2 or 3 every day he was up there.
Well, I've got some good news. For the first time in a long time, Service County Sheriff's Department is rejoining Governor's Highway Safety Program. They have a new part that I wish they would have had it at Princeton, because I would have made a fortune off of overtime. But they have a new part of it that's school zone enforcement for speed. So my guys are chomping at the bit to start working some of this grant money. And hopefully, if everything goes to plan by March 1st, we'll be up and running in the program and definitely see some more patrolling in the school zones, because that's overtime for my guys, and my guys like money just like anybody else does. So I'll definitely make that known. And then in truth, with Jumping Branch talk it here in town, I mean, they fly through these school zones. My kids go to Pike Christian Academy, and it's awful up there also.
Well, I know Jeff Cooper used to take care of the mornings.
Yeah.
He would clock in and go out there and run radar until he went to work. But I don't know if he's still doing it or not. I haven't talked to him for a little while.
But yeah, that's definitely something that a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand anyone speeding through a school zone. So we won't be and there's no warnings. That will be a department policy. No warnings. You're going to get a hardback if you're speeding in the school zone. So,
I appreciate it.
all right. Any other questions?
Sheriff, a resource, excuse me, this mask. A resource officer, do they dress in uniform such as you're in when they're in school, or what's the?
I'm actually, statewide, there's a huge issue with sheriff's office and uniforms right now. The Sheriff's Association is looking to change our uniform. The reason being is cost effectiveness. For me to be outfitted in this uniform right now, you're looking at just the uniform part of it, upwards of $400 to $500. Counties are getting tired of paying that. And it's state mandated that we have this uniform, but most agencies are going away from this type of uniform just
Okay.
because if you rip a pair of pants, it's $125. That adds up for small counties. So I'm actually looking to redo our uniform. I don't know if most of you see me out, but I wear some brown, the brown dress pants with a black polo and a gun belt. And truthfully, that's what my goal would be for our uniform in the future. I think it still looks very professional. I mean, it doesn't look as good as this, nothing does. But as far as cost effectiveness and budget wise, I don't foresee me having them in this Class A uniform. And truthfully, this is kind of intimidating. Also, on that aspect, yeah, you look professional, but you're also, it's hard to approach someone that looks like me. I definitely understand that, especially as a timid 14, 15, 16-year-old.
So you want a softer approach?
Yeah, softer
presence. Okay. What is your department or your position on visibility of deputies at some of the major sporting events or gatherings we have in the county?
I would definitely, and I'm a football fan, so if I get an excuse to go to a game, I'm going to go. But I know right now, I think the city covers the high school football games and stuff like that. And I mean, I can't mandate my guys being out there without some pay
I understand.
of some sort. But if the county would be open to that, I would definitely like to have my deputies out there at the football games and basketball games and stuff like that. And I'm sure we could work something out. But I'm a big sports fan. My kids play sports, so I'll definitely be at some of the football games and stuff like that. But
Just a thought, Superintendent Warville, I know at the high school, we often employ agencies, and I think they're from out of the county to come in to provide security. And I don't know what that costs the school, but if there's any way that cost could be worked out to where we apply it to our local officers, that's something that I think the board would like for you just to look into and see the possibility of that.
One thing Mr. Ferris and I talked about, he can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but our conversation was if we did have that school resource officer come to the football game, then we would pay them the overtime.
Yeah.
So that was the agreement that, we have to, the first year we need to put in around $5,000 to $6,000 in the hopper for overtime. And that's just not for football games, but let's say there's a situation where parents aren't home during the school hours, but we need to have an officer go to the house in the evening, which would be after school hours, which would be overtime now, to talk to the parents about truancy issues. Because that's another thing that we can work with the sheriff's department is not to go beat up on people, that's not the point, but to have someone go and say, hey, we were at the school, we missed your kid, we need you to come to school, let's go to school. Because we're doing this the nice way, this is better than seeing us in another way.
Yep.
And so what we'd like to do is educate people, not incarcerate people. That's the goal. It's not anything the school resource officer is a preventive measure, not to get people in any kind of trouble. But I'm just glad that we have a county sheriff who is so interested in the school program that this is a good fit for us. But we're looking at one position at the middle school, high school, because it's under one roof, and we can get two birds with one stone on that one, starting out with.
And I've spoke briefly with the county commission about this, about one of the agreements that we had discussed, and they are very open to this. They definitely see the need for the school resource officer position. I think that they'll definitely be on board whenever we get the agreement finalized. I don't foresee any issue with the commission. And I've actually we didn't have a current active hiring list. So as of March 1st, we start taking applications. And I don't know necessarily whether the new officer that we hire will be the one that goes down there, or if it will be one of my existing deputies. That's something I'll have to address whenever I go start the hiring process. And he had actually talked to me about maybe one of the representatives from the school board coming to our review board whenever we start the hiring process, and I would definitely be open to that.
Is there any special training that is required to be a resource officer?
There's no training required by the state, but my goal would be to hire by July 1 and try to get them in a class. If COVID makes it possible before the school year starts in September, try to have them in a class, because there are several classes nationwide for school resource officers, just interacting with kids, what to do, what not to do, how to handle situations, because the police academy teaches you how to handle most adult situations. As far as like cyberbullying, there's nothing like that to the academy. So I would definitely, if not this summer, hopefully during the school year, sending them to some class to get them better equipped to do it. I'm all about training. My guys, they already found out this summer we're gonna be training a lot, but the more you train, the more prepared you are. So I'm all for that. But no, it's not state mandated, but I will get them in some training for the position.
Are there any other questions by any members or anyone in the room would have any questions of the sheriff? If not, I would like to let everybody know, and the board members, that on January the 1st, when the sheriff took office, on that first day, he was at Dairy Queen. He visited the old man's club over there. And immediately he started talking to me, and he told me he's going to be contacting Superintendent Warville, and he began talking about the school resource officer. And so he's been on this all along, and I want to say we appreciate you taking your time. We also appreciate you reaching out to Superintendent Warville, and the board and the entire school system looks forward to working with you and having a good partnership, and thank you very much.
Definitely. Well,
Thanks,
thanks for
sir.
the invitation today.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
You too, stay safe.
Thanks. We'll just move on to Ms. Crook, consumer personnel.
Okay, so there were a couple things that you were given.
You can just exit out if you need to.
Okay, so you do have the spreadsheet. It's probably on the back of the little packet that you have. And going over personnel, there's several things that have to be considered. The first thing is what we're looking at with our funding. The first page that you received was just preliminary based on what we are receiving this year. And again, this is all preliminary numbers, because depending on what happens in legislative session, these numbers can change, depending on any bills that come through. But if you look at our final comps from last year compared to what we are receiving this new year, we're about $345,000 less than what we received last year. That is basically going to come down to our enrollment. Our enrollment, we were down 4% in enrollment this year, 61 students. Doesn't seem like a lot when you say 61 students, but it's a good chunk of change. When you're looking at approximately $4,500 per student, you take that, and then also we had an increase in our local share with the taxes that we will have and what we have to put in. Just a couple little items for you all to know. Our enrollment was 1387, but we are funded at 1400. So if we can get those 61 kids back in our back with us, that's just going to help us. It's not going to do anything to hurt us. We are one of the counties in the state that will be funded at the 1400 level, because we are so rural, and that sort of stuff with our area. Again, some of this stuff is just for your all's reference, so you all have. This is where I pulled our numbers. Our public school support, as you can tell, our total basic program allowance is $9.2 million. Our local share is the 2.8, and in state aid we'll receive about $6.4 million. come up with our basic personnel. Whenever, one of these last sheets, based on our enrollment, which is 1,400, we are eligible for 101.85 positions of professional, educators. The number of professional support personnel, which are your nurses, your counselors, those employees, we are at 7, and service personnel, we're at 63.95. So what we've done is we've taken the needs of what our county is, how many enrollment, what we have in each classroom, what we have at each school, and we put all this together. Green positions are what we're looking at that would be changing based on, can everybody see that? Okay, so the green would be basically what our needs are to change in the schools. And then our yellow positions are true vacant positions that are currently filled with a substitute. Now, these are all proposed positions for next school year, based on our numbers. We took the numbers at the end of January, what we have in those classrooms, to kind of put this together. You know, special ed, we have special ed positions across 3 of our schools. We have science, math, English. Right now, these jobs are currently filled with substitutes, and we're low on substitutes as well. As you can see, the top portion of this is all state-funded positions. So when we take all of these positions, our goal for the year is 108.85. Our professionally funded, that's 101.85. We're currently sitting at 101. So we would be under formula by 0.85 positions if we go with, based on what our needs currently are in the schools and what our enrollment is. This next section right here, these are your student support personnel. Those are your counselors, your nurses, and so on. Whenever we look at funding, we Title I funds. All of our schools qualify for Title I. Currently, only our 3 elementary schools are who we have been giving those funds to. But we are looking at opening up the high school next year for Title I funding. With doing that, we would be able to move one of our assistant principals, the high school assistant principal, into Title I funding, and the half-time counselor for the high school into that Title I funding. With doing that, that opens up half a position right here with our student support. What we're proposing is that we add another nurse. This would allow our current nurse to be at the comprehensive high school facility, 1 nurse at Hinton area because they're our 2 largest schools, and then Jumping Branch and Talcott would share a nurse, which would be half-time at each school, based on the needs of our students. How we would fund this is this half position right here with student support services, and then also half-time with CARES. This next section right here is your state funded project, or state funded grants. Half of that is our special ed director, and then the LPN, which right now we're currently looking for an instructor, or we'll soon be looking for an instructor for that position. This next section here is our federal grants. These are our Title I teachers. As you can see, we did what I mentioned with moving our principal and counselor into this funding source, and then there may be some need to change the positions with the special ed coordinator and pre-K coordinator. So this is basically all of the funding between state aid, state funding grants, and then federal grants. And then lastly, Mr. Orville was able to get some community and schools money. So tentatively, this is just kind of what we're looking at. Possibly these positions could change, but we know that we can get at least 4 positions with community and schools. So I just kind of plugged these in here. Of course, this could change, but we have 4 positions between social workers and community and school coordinators. And then again, this purple would be the nurse out of CARES funding. These positions right here, these 4 positions are not state aid eligible funded positions, but these are county funded positions. So when you look at this, we have 4 county funded positions that have to come out of local funds. So again, when you look at state aid funding, we're below formula by 0.85 in professional. When you go and look at service,
Can you pause for 1 minute?
Yeah.
If you go back real quick, you all have a handout. It's front and back of what community schools, what that is about. So this is a plan on a page, a real quick hit. You don't have to read over it right now, but basically a community schools person would deal with the at-risk children or students or young adults, however you wanna look at it, that are 10% of the population that are the highest risk. And what we would do is that person would work with those students to help them so they don't become a dropout. Even in elementary, around 3rd grade is when they start getting into dropout. If you start catching them in junior high and high school, it could be too late. It's usually around 3rd or 4th grade is when they start having a bad taste in their mouth for the public school system. Because there's a lot of factors. But long story short, we're able to secure 4 positions that the county does not have to pay for through a grant. And the governor's wife, Kathy Justice, is really big into this, and Greenbrier County, since it's our neighboring county, will work with us to see how it looks, feels, and they've been doing it for about 15 years. So they said we can work with them or any other neighboring counties that are interested in us to learn from them on the growing pains of becoming a community school system. So just want to let you know that's good that we're going to get funding for those people. And they're looking at trying to get a 5th one. They're going to try to go for 5. But honestly, guys, 4 is huge because each person with fixed cost is close to $50,000 to $55,000 when you look at each person. So you're talking, you know, a couple $100,000 right there just in 4 people when you look at the cost that we don't have to incur. So I just want to let you know that. And then going back to Ms. Crooks, the beginning page, where you saw we're at a negative 346, 412. Basically, if you divide that by 61 students, that's a little over $5,000 a student. So that's kind of where we are with those kids. Now, having said that, if you look in today's Register Herald paper, front page talks about this Hope Scholarship. And what I'm concerned about is we could be losing money if they start saying you're not going to get the $1,400 no matter what. That could change with law. They could say, nope, you have $1,393, you're going to get funded for $1,393. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying I've been watching and talking to our delegates and senators about my concerns when you start moving money around. $101 million is a lot of money that they're talking about this Hope Scholarship, and my concern is these parents might think, oh, that's a good deal, but at the end of the day, if they don't like what they had, we have to take them back in our system. We cannot turn anybody down. We cannot discriminate. So I'm just letting everybody know all that ties in and dovetails together. So sorry, Ms. Crook. Before you went to service, I wanted to let you know what's going on with that.
So when we look at service employees, there are a couple of changes that we're talking about with a couple positions. Again, this is state aid funded positions. We currently have 68.19 positions, and we are funded for 63.952. So we would be over 4.2. However, we're also looking at adding a couple of different things. Special ed aid at each location. We currently have a half-time warehouse clerk. We'd like to continue that with everything that's going on. And then something with transportation. A couple years ago, Brian decided to get some inventory software and inventory our stuff. Well, now it's coming down the pike that now this is kind of what transportation is leaning towards. So we were ahead of the game with that. But we have a parts clerk now, and we want to make sure that we can keep that. So that's going to be a under CARES funding as well. Again, state grants, special ed, which would be your IDEA or federal funds. And whenever we look at everything, we would be almost 12 positions over. However, if you look, I gave you a spreadsheet, and just a basic comps for what we're looking at over and under. Last fiscal year, we were 7 over in professional employees, educators. This year, we were 1.15 over, and what we're proposing for next year is we would be under 0.85. Last year, student support, we were under, and we're looking at being even for this current year and even next year. Service personnel, I've added a couple columns. We were over almost 6 positions last year. Currently, we are over 9.49. However, when you take out that ESERF, we are right at approximately 6 positions. With service, it's really hard to try to get even or under, just because of the needs based on cook, meal per meals served per hour, aides in the classroom, you know, special ed needs, custodian needs, transportation needs. It's really hard to try to hone that in. When we're looking at next year, we're approximately gonna be 12 over, but we have 7.7 positions that would be funded with the CARES money. So we would be over about 4. So based on where we have been to where we're trying to go, we're really trying to bring that in so that the county is not picking up any positions, and we are trying to stay in that state aid formula. Any questions?
Looks like you've done a good job if you can hold it to.
Well, yeah. I would like to thank the central office staff. This isn't just a 1 or 2 person job. It's everybody looking at our numbers and trying to crunch them and see what we can do, because the ultimate goal is servicing our students. And man, you just never know with a special ed situation here and there, or a bus driving situation there, or cooks, custodians. Those are the jobs that are a little bit harder, because when they're not there, people notice. When a bus doesn't show up or an aide doesn't show up, you just really don't notice that, especially our special ed kids. But it does look like a little overage with using CARES Act money, but that money is there to be provided to help with services right now. So our kids, when they come back full time, they'll be still eating in their classrooms. So cleaning up and getting the lunches to the classrooms to and from, that's just an example. We're also going to be having summer school. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So we're basically going to school 12 months out of the year right now, because we're trying to catch up from this COVID slide. Not a summer slide, but a COVID slide. So we're working hard to keep the money as tight as we possibly can. So I want to thank the staff here for working hard to make that happen.
Do you have a number, based on the fact that you're able to use CARE money for some of this funding, do you have a number on what that saves us out of local funds as compared to what it was before?
When you're looking at, you're probably somewhere between $40,000 to $50,000 per position. So when you're looking at, you know, this year, for example, probably about $125,000 to $150,000, and next year you're probably looking at anywhere from $300,000 to $350,000.
Of money that we will not be spending out of local funds because we are utilizing the other.
And that's just personnel though. That's not the other.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on this you'd like to address? Now would be the time. So Superintendent Warville, I think it'd be important for the board to know, and for the public, whoever may be listening in, with that money that you now are not having to spend of local monies, could you share with us what you're going to be doing with that has a positive outcome on our system?
Yeah, we are, we need to start setting money aside for capital improvements. Our buildings every year get older, they don't get younger, and when you start looking at upkeep, today Mr. Widows had to go to Jumping Branch. We've had a couple more leaks. That roof is leaking, and we're trying to hold tight till we can get someone in here to bid that out, but that's just one example. You know, we have a high school that just got an updated of an HVAC of $4 million from the School Building Authority. These projects need more funding, and so with us going to the table next month with the School Building Authority asking for $8.2 million, they're going to say, well, what are you going to do to start being preventative? And this is a way we can prevent by shifting that money into an account for capital improvements. And it's, I hate to say, lack of better words, a rainy day fund to help patch up or maintain. I'd like to get in a position where we're maintaining, not fixing up. And that's the thing that we're trying to accomplish right now.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Jones to talk about some instructional programs that she has. Did you get my clicker? You good? Okay. Don't forget to flip it on now. I've done that a few times. Why isn't it working?
to share with you today, but first of all, we'll talk about curriculum and instruction and some professional development that we are currently having in our district. And this, Dr. Knott can chime in too. She's been spending a lot of time with me and Dr. Edwards and the principals. But he is meeting with us monthly here at the central office, usually the first day with Dr. Knott and myself. And then on the second day, he's meeting with all of us here at the central office and our principals. And the purpose of this professional development is to build our capacity within our principals, instructional leadership, and the capacity for our teachers. Some things that we have been covering is deconstructing the standards. We have a form that we'll be using that takes our power standards, our critical standards for each grade level. We're looking at that standard. We're looking at the standard before and after. And we're building learning activities around that particular standard. Assessing our assessments. Dr. Knott, would you like to talk about assessing our assessments?
We've briefly talked about this before, but they're continuing to do this where they're collecting, the principals are collecting assessments that their teachers are giving. And there's a form also to use for that, identifies the standard. Also, it, there's a bird. The DOK levels, depth of knowledge levels, and trying to help everybody see that what we assess, we're expecting, so we're assessing on a very low level, which means that's what we're teaching and expecting. So that helps us see so that we can change the way we're assessing and providing instruction.
The Mastery Matrix is a new document that he shared with us at his last meeting and then again this week. The Mastery Matrix it's kind of like a puzzle. You take your standard and then you build those learning activities. And on the bottom, you start with your DOK 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. The purpose of that is to get teachers to see that you can start at the DOK 3 or 4 level and make it more student-centered and student-facilitated. And then while the students are in that productive struggle, because those DOK 4 activities are going to be harder, then the teacher can scaffold and teach those skills in small groups for students that are having difficulty. We are encouraging our principals to do walkthroughs, which they have before, but now we're doing our walkthroughs with a different eye. We're looking for student engagement, not just students sitting there being compliant while the teacher is giving direct instruction. We want to see more student-led instruction going on in the classroom. After the walkthroughs, the principals within 24 hours are meeting with those teachers and having a 10-minute meeting. We have questions that have been prepared by Dr. Edwards that he shared with us. The principals have given those questions out to their teachers so they are aware before they come into the 10-minute meeting so it can be more productive. And this PD rollout to the school staff, our principals are, like I said, coming here once a month, receiving the PD, and then they're going back to their schools, and we are doing a slow rollout, a gradual release to their school teachers and staff. This week, Dr. Edwards was, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Could you go back to the previous screen quickly? Let's have a couple of questions. On bullet 1, deconstructing the standards, by that you mean the objectives for each course that the state says we should be teaching in each course that the students should be learning and mastering, correct?
That is correct.
When you say deconstructing them, could you explain just a little bit to all of us what goes on in the deconstruction of these objectives for each course?
Yes. You look at the standard, and then you look at the standard before that and after, so you get that vertical alignment, what happens at each grade level. Then you build out the skills. You pick out the skills skills that the standard is asking. And you make your learning targets. Those need to be kid-friendly, and I'll get into that on the next slide. I can statements are learning targets. And then the bottom part of that form is making those activities at each grade level, or at each DOK level.
And you're also identifying what mastery looks like for that standard.
For that particular standard, what you have to be accomplishing on that standard to get to the mastery level, which is where we want to get to on our testing and assessment.
Yes.
Okay. Regarding the DOK levels on these different objectives, the depth of knowledge, and what that, I'm assuming what you mean by that is how many, we have depth of knowledge 1 or 2. Could you just share with us in general, what are you finding about the depth of knowledge for teacher tests that are being made, the assessments, as well as the instruction? Are you finding that it's really heavy weighted toward the low depth of knowledge, which is not challenging students enough? Could you expound on that a little bit?
The DOK 1 and 2 is basic recall of information. So a lot of our assessments that come with our curriculum are DOK 1 and 2. So our teachers, we provide those curriculum and teacher manuals. So they are following what's been given to them. But we want to stretch our students and give them more difficult learning activities with a DOK 3 and 4.
That's all I have on that. Thank you.
And usually, what we've seen with the assessments and learning activities, you can make a small adjustment in what you're doing in the classroom and bring that learning activity up to a 3 or 4.
I guess I do have one other question. Is this the principals and the teachers, Dr. Edwards doing a good job in presenting that to them so that they're understanding where Dr. Edwards and ultimately Superintendent Warble wants us to go in our, not only our testing, but also in our daily instruction? How's that going as far as the work through?
It is going well. I spoke about the slow release with the principals. It has been a slow release of information to us and the principals because we want to practice it here and make sure we can do all of these things with fidelity. So then we're comfortable enough to go back and teach our staff and how to do the same. So it has been very productive. Our work sessions have been very productive with Dr. Edwards.
So Superintendent Warble,
This
go ahead, Dr. Knott.
This last one that we had was very encouraging. The principals were really, seemed to start taking ownership.
Start grasping as instructional leaders, which is one of their primary jobs.
I think the productive struggle or stretch or frustration is going to be there. That's natural anytime you change something. But Ms. Jones brought it up. It's like a tailored eye now. You know what you're actually looking for. And as we get ready for this caravan for our language arts curriculum, now our principals and teachers know as they look through it, does the standard, is it actually in the book? And let's look to see if our standards are in there. And then if we end up going with that book, are the level of questions higher order thinking versus just recall or fill in the blank? Because we need to have kids that are problem solvers, not Google people. If you can Google it, that's a DOK 1, guys. Anybody can Google something, but to actually understand it and then apply it, that's a DOK 4. That's a whole different ballgame. So it's just a slow burn right now, but our principals have come back with homework assignments from Dr. Edwards to the directors to the principals, and we go through this productive struggle, and then we learn from it. And then when teachers have some issues with what the principals did, the principals can say, oh, I went through that, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Because if you ask someone to do something and you have no idea, how do you answer those questions? You just can't. And to tell someone what to do, it does not work. You have to understand it before you can release that out to the general population. So we have some teachers who are working with principals that are understanding this, but we are slowly rolling this out. But the good news is during a pandemic, We are focusing on our assessments because our assessments have been lower level, and that's no fault of anybody in this county. This is happening throughout the country, and if you want results, you look at the state report card, and we score pretty low in language, arts, and math. And it's not to blame anybody, it's just to, let's try a different way. Because the difference between insanity and genius is, if you do the same thing over and over again, you're gonna get the same results. So let's take a risk. We can't hurt our scores. They're low enough already. And that, again, that's not putting any shame, name, or blame. It's just, what can we do to make a constructive change in our school system? And this is how we're building capacity right now, is through our principals. And I agree with Dr. Knott. This last one, I told all the principals, I said, I'm proud of you guys. This is, it's like that aha moment. They're getting there. So that's good. So we're pretty proud of them, what they're doing. So back to you, Ms. Jones, sorry.
While Dr. Edwards was here this week, we went to Jumping Branch and Talkit, and Dr. Edwards was in Mr. Ramsey's classroom, and he said it was 7 minutes of heaven. One thing that we really want to see in our classrooms is the learning targets posted. That is related to your standard, what you're teaching, but we want it to be in kid-friendly terms. So when the second graders look there at ELA, I can visualize what I read as well as find the main idea supported by the details. So that student knows that's the end in mind. That's what I need to be able to do after this lesson or after this week's unit. And John Hattie's research shows that you can have at least a 20% increase in student achievement by just having these learning targets posted on the board so the students know what's expected.
That's huge. And if you know anything about John Hattie, which not many people do, he does a lot of research on cause and effect. And he's done enough research that I would support his data. And when I saw that from Dr. Edwards with the principals, a lot of the principals were writing that down feverishly so they could share that with their staff. So as you go in through the buildings, we want to see more of this being pervasive, just not 1 or 2 classrooms as you go through the building. So that's a huge target to see. 20% increase. That's a big number to me when you look at just putting up in your classroom. Now obviously the teacher has to do the rest of the work. Just 20% is not enough, but that's a huge number in statistics if you look at it that way.
This is a great preempter of the eternal 9-year-old question, why do I have to do this?
Yeah, because I said so doesn't work. It just doesn't.
You know, I've long been aware of what Mr. Ramsey does in his classrooms, and I'm telling you, what he's doing there's a couple things. It is absolutely outstanding preparation before he gets to the classroom, and that's the key to being a real effective teacher, is the preparation he's doing.
A full disclaimer, Mr. Duncan, and these ladies can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember Dr. Edwards said he had no idea where to come in the building, and Miss Rhodes was in here and she goes, I kind of got nervous. I'm like, oh, Dr. Edwards is here. So what I'm saying is, we're not trying to scare anybody. This was not a dog and pony show. He had no idea. This was just us. When I say us, I didn't go, but they did. Showing up out of the blue, he had no idea Dr. Edwards was going to be in his classroom.
And that's an effective way to do evaluations, is they don't know. And what you did there is you caught him doing great work, and that's really special. And I've been aware of that for a long time. And it would seem to me that the job he's doing, and I know Mr. Ramsey might want to do it, boy, we need to put out there what he's doing and let him get other people to see, hey, this is how you do this, and this is effective. And that's wonderful. That's all I have to say.
Just talking about small tweaks, though, we were in other classrooms, and there were other teachers had their essential questions and their standards on the board. So a small tweak is to take it a little bit farther and add that student-friendly I can question and target skill.
I think good teaching is contagious, and what you're telling me there are things catching on that's turning the paradigm here, that's moving us the way we want to go. You don't do it overnight. We're asking people to do something totally different than what many of them have been taught to do. So I applaud you all number one, you understand that you're grasping, you're out there from you, Mr. Wardle, and your entire staff. So thank you very much.
Well, I can honestly say, I appreciate the compliment, but, you know, when you go into a classroom and you hear a guest from out of the state who's a national world leader, Dr. Edwards is, and he said this was not anything that this guy knew I was coming in there. He said I had to take a picture, and he said 7 minutes of nirvana, or if I die and go to education heaven, that's what I want to look like. I just thought that was a big compliment to our teachers. So Mr. Ramsey deserves all the credit, and it was so funny to hear the principal when Miss Rhodes was over here. She goes, I got scared, but I'm thinking after he left, I bet you didn't feel scared anymore because your teachers are doing the work. And that's not to say Mr. Ramsey's the only one. It was just that day at that school where he visited. I think it was just Talcott and Jumping Branch that day. He doesn't go to every school each time he's in the county, but he likes to just peek in and see how things are going. And he took a snapshot, and he just thought this is what it should start looking like in this county.
We have a former very experienced superintendent here, and this is good stuff, is it not?
That's why we have scope.
Yes. That's about all you gotta say about that. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Dr. Edwards observed Mr. Ramsey's class in math. Those 7 minutes of heaven was a math class. And it was a word problem. And Mr. Ramsey could have stood at the board and went word by word and step by step of that word problem, but he didn't. He gave it to his students and let them struggle, a productive struggle for those students. They had to pick out vocabulary, they had to find the steps on how to work that problem out. And the students were having some difficulty, but Mr. Ramsey was going around and providing assistance to those students, but they kept working at it. So that also tells me that Mr. Ramsey has built relationships with these students, so they felt safe to make those small mistakes. And then he also gave dojo points. That is kind of like a behavior computer system that Talcott uses. He gave 2 points to the students that got the problem correct, but he also gave 1 point to the students that got it incorrect. So it gave an incentive for those kids to keep trying. We are currently in an ELA textbook adoption with the State Department, and the State Department does give some guidelines for the adoption, and one being that the textbook has to meet 80% of this grade level standards. But I talked to Dr. Edwards and got some more guidance because I felt like we needed to look at our textbook adoption with a new lens. So we've set some groundwork and some guidelines for the adoption, and there's 6 of them. We want to make sure that the critical skills or the focus skills are covered with fidelity, and we want to make sure that there's enough of it in there that it'll lead to student mastery. We would like to see 1/3 of the textbook dedicated to DOK 3 and 4 learning activities. And we want to see real world examples of that's relevant to the student. It may have something to do with a career that they may never explore in their math book or science book. We want to bring it down to something that's relevant to their grade level. And we want to make sure that the concepts are integrated and not taught in isolation. And we want to make sure that each unit starts with the end in mind, the big picture. And we want to know that we don't have to start at page 1 and teach to page 300 in a sequential order. We want the teachers to be able to be flexible in how the standards are covered in the textbook.
When you deal with these companies, you ask them what their specific score was on the percent met. you'll find in order to get approved by the state to get on there, they had to do 80. But some of them be up there 90, 95. I've even seen some that are 99%, and you'll see a lot hovering down around 80. So that's an important question to ask them, and they need to provide it for you.
Moving on to summer school, we're going to continue with credit recovery for our high school students. That'll be a 6-week program. We do this every summer for our 9 through 12 students that need to recover credits. But our summer school is going to look quite a bit different this year than what we have done in the past. We're going to offer a summer school to grades K through 12, and we're going to run it for 4 weeks. There are going to be 2-week increments, so if a student can attend the first 2 weeks but not the last 2 weeks, that's okay. Or they may decide to attend all 4 weeks of the summer school. It's going to have a STEM focus: science, technology, engineering, and math. And at the end, we're going to have a parent involvement event where we bring the parents in and they can see the projects that the students have worked on. And our funding is going to come from a summer learning grant, which Mr. Warble will send our intent letter by next week. We have to have that in by the 24th. We can also fund this with Title I, CSI, and even some of the CARES money if we would need to. So we have lots of funding available. And we're gonna need several positions for our summer school. We'd like to have 1 ELA and 1 math teacher for our high school credit recovery. Summer school, we want an elementary coordinator and a secondary coordinator. We need 9 teachers to cover our elementary grades K through 5, and 8 teachers to cover 6 through 12. We need 2 cooks.
No, we need 4 cooks.
We need 4 cooks, but only 2 is coming out of it. So 4 cooks for the whole summer program, summer school and summer feeding. And 2 custodians and 7 to 8 bus drivers. We're gonna provide transportation out to central locations: Jumping Branch, Pipestem, Sandstone, Green Sulphur area, a town run, probably upland, so Forest Hill. So 7 to 8 bus drivers we'll need for this project.
If I may ask, I know how you're funding it. These individuals who be working, are they funded at so much per hour, or is it based upon what they normally make? Have you gotten that far yet?
What we've gotten is, from what I understand, we can pay them $23 an hour to teach. That's what it is.
Summer school.
Yeah, whatever. There's no really steps on it. It's just 23 an hour.
Okay.
But I can say that, never mind, she's already, I'll just shut up. Go ahead. I don't want to steal her thunder.
We're gonna have to prepare for our summer school, and it's gonna look different. Like I said, it's gonna have a STEM focus. So we are working with the June Harless Center from Marshall University. They're gonna provide professional development for our teachers. 2 dates in April for our elementary grade teachers, and 2 dates in May for our secondary teachers. Our teachers will receive a stipend for attending, and that has in the past been a $200 per day stipend, and also lunch will be provided. And our funding, again, is summer learning grant. I added in Math for Life because that grant is all about professional development for math and STEM. And we can also utilize Title I and CSI funding.
The only thing I can say is, with the June Harless Center, we're gonna continue to work with them after the summer, because we're gonna look at professional development for our elementary teachers to do math credentialing. We have scored lower in the math, and I even have an elementary certificate, and I only took 1 or 2 math courses. And if I'm gonna teach math, 1 or 2 math courses in your undergrad is not as good as someone who is a math major, we'll just put it that way. So we're gonna work with our elementary teachers to get them math credentialed. And there's like, I believe 6 or 7 courses that Marshall does. I'll get more details to you guys later. But that's gonna be on one initiative. The other will be teaching with STEM initiative with our other teachers. So we want very specific training for math at the elementary levels, and then we'll bring in training for everybody else for STEM initiative as we move forward.
That specific math training for elementary teachers,
Yes.
that will take place when? Is that during the summer? Is that?
No, that will be after the summer as we get ready for next school year. You can't squeeze in, the reason why we're doing it this way is these two trainings will get ready for summer projects, and then when we bring June Harless in for next academic school year, they're gonna continue to be coming back and working with our teachers to credentialize them, because it's basically like taking a 3-hour course at the college level. They're breaking it up into segments to help out with that. So it's a process. It's gonna be more of a marathon, not a sprint. This is more of a sprint to the summer, because if you're a teacher and you came to this, it'll be a lot easier to hire you for this summer if you'd like to do that. And the reason why we decided to go 2 weeks and 2 weeks, because some people right now have some maybe summer plans or activities, and they might not be able to do all 4 weeks of summer school. But if I can get a couple teachers here and a couple there, again, we're posting positions, that doesn't mean they'll get filled. So we're hoping they get filled. That's why we want to post them sooner than later. But we also talked to June Harless about Marshall grads. If you graduated with a teaching certificate, tell me about them. They can teach, and we can also recruit them maybe. So we're trying to pull in young talent if we can as well.
I'd like to say this is not to cast any negative aspersion on our elementary teachers. In talking with recent graduates, one of whom you know, Dr. Knott, the preparation at the collegiate university level for elementary teachers and the number of classes in math they require them to take, quite frankly, is abysmal. And so they are sent out without having some of this instruction that June Harless is going to provide. So we don't want to cast a negative light on our elementary teachers. That's not what this is about. What we're really doing is we're going in and filling in for things they should have been taught and offered in university level. It didn't happen, and this is going to be a major improvement, guys. Okay.
I'd also like to go over federal program grants and CSI grant, give you some updates on our available balances. Title I, we have a balance for our fiscal year 20 of $27,932.48. And our Title I is serving Hinton area, Jumping Branch, and Talcott. And for our fiscal year 21, as you can see, we have a large number there for our balance. We have $823,336.70. And again, we're just serving 3 schools. So in the past, I had brought up serving other schools for Title I. And then when Mr. Warble came on board, he was very open to my suggestions. We have 5 schools in the county, and as long as they are above the 35% poverty rate, we can serve them as a Title I school. All 5 of our schools are in the 50 to 65% poverty rate. So my suggestion is start using the Title I money for our next year grant for our fiscal year 22 and add in the high school. And then once we lose the CSI grant, we'll incorporate the middle school as well. And Lauren spoke about that in her personnel presentation. Title II funds, they are used for professional development, and a percentage of our tips, our technology staff salaries are paid from Title II. And we now have a balance for our fiscal year 21 of $38,368.14. And at the bottom, our projected allowance or allocation is going to be $113,293.92. So we usually don't have any problem using our Title II funds. You have 2 years to use those funds, but we utilize those better than Title I, because we don't get as much money. Title IV, fiscal year 20, we have a balance of $42,721.49. And then fiscal year 21, we still have the full grant amount. And this is where the resource officer comes into play. Title I federal programs, you are supposed to at least allot 20% to safe and healthy students. So at a minimal, 20% of your Title IV should go to that. So we can add more on to that 20% and pay for the resource officer under the federal programs, Title IV. Or we can utilize the CARES as long as we have it. Comprehensive school improvement grant, that's our middle school grant. Our fiscal year 21 balance right now is $140,537.15. I wanted to explain why we have so much left. First of all, we have CARES money coming in, we have other grants, but we also had some positions that we've had a hard time filling. We had an interventionist position, and it took us a while to find an applicant for that. She took that position for a while, but now we needed a 6th grade math teacher. So the interventionist has now moved in to take the 6th grade math position. So the interventionist is still open, it's an open job posting. This year, we haven't had discipline problems, so we didn't need to utilize the after-school alternative ed program. So there's some extra money allotted in that project. After-school tutors, those were posted for quite some time, and we finally got 2 applicants for that and 1 substitute applicant. There's quite a bit of money allotted in the parent involvement project, and as you know, with COVID, we haven't had as many parent involvement activities that we would usually have. We still have some budgeted money for STEM supplies and classroom supplies, and there is quite a bit of money allotted to professional development. So it's our hope to be able to get the supplies ordered, use some of the professional development money, and maybe move some things around so we can utilize this money. But the leadership team and Ms. Hudson, they're aware of the budget. They have the budget at the beginning of the year. So we are currently working with Ms. Hudson, and Margaret Williamson is our CSI person from the State Department. So I just wanted to give you an update on grants and balances and yes.
Is there a date when this CSI grant money has to be encumbered by? Is that September 30th or?
It is September. It has to be
Encumbered?
encumbered and liquidated in October.
Okay.
There's possibility we might get some waivers on that because of the COVID pandemic.
Where you could
But-
extend it and spend it later.
But as of
Carry
right
over.
now, we do not have any extensions or waivers. Is there any other questions about the grants?
Any more? Anybody? No?
Well, next on the list, thank you, Ms. Jones, we have, facilities, and, I have, well, Eric went out in the hallway. He's, bringing in Casto, because Casto can talk to you guys about how, we can use, our current HVAC system and upgrade them with the ionization. And I'd rather they speak on it because they'll speak more intelligently on it. I'll just be able to speak in a nebulous way to say, this is supposed to make our air better. So, I'll turn it over to Mr. Widows. You all have his handout with you, or can you give that to them, Mr. Widows?
Yes, they have.
Okay, you should have a 1-pager about the facility report. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Widows to run this portion of the meeting.
All right. With your handout there, I just went over some of the projects and things that we're working on as far as facilities in our school system here. Matt here will be talking with you here shortly about our ionization upgrades. We'll also talk about Jumping Branch Elementary with the HVAC installation, and then we're going to look at roofing replacement and repairs, Board of Education renovations, middle school, and then Summers Middle School itself, the building we'll have here shortly, Mr. Polly and so forth. So, just real quick, we got a lot of things kind of going on, as you can see. So we're looking into the process. First of all, for the HVAC installation, Ken Huger came down last Friday with the State Department, and we did an inspection, and he pretty much gave us the green light to go ahead and proceed on with using the CARES Act money to get a new HVAC system up at Jumping Branch.
Which includes the electrical upgrade.
Yes, that'll be kind of part of it.
Let's just put it in the RFP because you can't have one without the other, so.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah.
Talking about a roof and HVAC and electrical, that's great.
So we're gonna meet also with our co-op, SCSC, next week, next Wednesday. Mr. Butcher's gonna be coming down, and he's gonna be looking at several of these projects that we'll be able to go through him and get these services done at our school. So we've got contracts and things set up with training through the state, so we'll be able to kind of explore those options there and kind of go with him, and hopefully through the co-op to get this completed. So also too, Mr. Butcher's also going to look at the roofing replacement and repairs for Jumping Branch. We had 3 leaks up there this morning. So while he's down next Wednesday, it's going to be a big day. It's also going to be looking at that as well too. We had a Zoom call earlier this week with Mr. Butcher with the company that has roofing solutions and things. So we'll kind of be talking with him.
Chris Farley was part of that Zoom. It's an ESC meeting.
Yeah.
Help you guys out with Jason Butcher when you hear that name. That's the new RESA 1 and 4 coming together with the ESC. So Ms. Farley can speak on roofing now. She knows a little bit more about it.
I appreciate that, Ms. Farley.
And then also, he's going to take a look at there and see, as far as our Board of Education renovations down at the middle school, what all that's going to entail as far as getting quotes and things on that. So hopefully after next Wednesday, we'll have a lot more things secured and lined up and ready to go and start the processes. So, but today, as far as our ionization upgrades, new technology that's coming out, Mr. Hubert said as well, this would be a project that we could use CARES Act funding for as well, because it deals with clean air quality in the school. And of course, Jumping Branch has an archaic heating and cooling system, so it was pretty much a no-brainer when he came up there. Some of those units and things up there is older than myself, so it's going to be a well-deserved upgrade once we get that going. So we got some information out as far as some companies and things are concerned, and we're talking right now with Casto Technical Services. And to kind of elaborate and go ahead and explain the ionization process and how it works and things, I will turn it over to Matt.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Matt Rivenbark. I'm actually a Jumping Branch guy. I live in Jumping Branch. And all my kids went through the Summers County school systems. I'm very familiar with everything that you have. Our company's out of Charleston. We've been in business for over 50 years. We do installation at schools, commercial and industrial facilities, schools, hospitals. I have 60 accounts that include Thomas Memorial, St. Francis, Raleigh Medical Center, lots of different locations up in Charleston. We work all the way up in Wheeling, and one of my biggest accounts is Fayette County Schools, so I'm very familiar with the school system. We do installation. When bids are put out for equipment replacement and controls at the schools, we're in the forefront of that in the state. And I'd like an opportunity to do that for y'all, to give you some pricing. But anyway, I do have a different brochure. I don't know if I've got enough to go around.
Thanks, sir.
The ionization, we've been doing this now for 8 months. Okay.
Just give it to,
Okay, here you go, sir.
give it to the board members, and then we'll get the rest.
Okay. And there's that particular pamphlet. If you take a look there on the front of it, that's actually one of our service techs, Billy McMitchy. And this is out of Fayette County School. And basically the process is we go in the drop ceiling, or we can do it on the roof. But we install these devices in the return air system. The only way they efficiently work is through a centralized system that's moving air through the space. And so the systems have to continuously run to, generate air exchanges in those rooms in order for it to work efficiently. But basically the way that this works, it uses needlepoint ion generators to treat the air. So it creates positive and negative ions that attack the coronavirus. It attacks molds, bacteria, and other things like that. And we all know molds in schools is a big no-no. Just as soon as there's a report that goes out to the public and to the people in the community that there's mold in a school, you all got a problem, and we know that. And so this helps. This helps because you have documentation that you've done certain things to address those possibilities, everything that you possibly can. And so basically the way it works, the air passes over the ion blocks, and it creates these positive and negative ions which attacks the coronavirus and SARS, COVID-2, and human coronavirus. One of the tests that they done, imagine the fuselage of a jet, negative air pressure or positive air pressure, a fuselage. The time in the chamber at 60 minutes, in 60 minutes, it killed the coronavirus, 90%. That's airborne. Basically, it was determined that at 10 minutes, 84% of the virus was inactivated. At 15 minutes, 92% of the virus was inactivated. And at 30 minutes, 99% was inactivated. This is a picture of it installed on the ductwork. So he removed the drop ceiling, and he went up in there and he drilled these holes, and he installed the ion blocks. We borrow the power right out of the unit. Drop it down, put a junction box. As you can see by the picture, we do a very professional job and a very professional installation. One of the things to keep in mind is this is a service-friendly product. It's not like, the lighting and so forth where you got to replace bulbs. You got to go in and wipe them down. These are service-friendly. The life cycle on these, or the lifespan on these, is 10 years. So this will go way past the pandemic. We all hope so. We hope that this is an issue we won't be discussing in another year or so. But we will always deal with molds, and we will always deal with other things like that. So this is some reading information. I've done went with one of your maintenance individuals to Summers County High. The equipment that we would take care of would be the roof equipment. That's what we would be installing it in, that basically, does the air exchanges in the building. Also, the 2 units that are in the gym, we'd be able to install something like that in those units. I went out to Talcott, the 3 AON units up on the roof, and also over to Hinton area. Can't do anything with jumping bridge at this time because you don't have a central system there. But that's something we can take care of for you later. Is there any questions?
The constant recycling of the air in the building through the cold air returns or whatever it's going through.
Yes, sir.
These effective against viruses across the broad spectrum, not just COVID-19, just viruses in general?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so this circulation of air, how long, I know you says 10 minutes, 15, how many of these ionization things would be attached? Is it at all ends within the ductwork, or how is? I know you said something about the roof.
Okay, so
Do you have
basically,
some sort of picture that they can see, or Google it, or?
well,
Is it in your magazine?
if you take a look at this right here, what you're looking at is coming out of the bottom of a unit. Typically, I'm assuming your school is set up like this. Let's just take, for instance, at the theater at Summers County High, you have a large train IPAC up on the roof. It has a return air plenum, and it grabs air from within the space. That's where all this will be installed, is on that metal ductwork. It'll be isolated to just that particular unit. And so as the return air is pulled through, it begins to charge the particles that would be, as you could see, mold, bacteria, and viruses. And it begins to attack those particles. As it attacks them, it breaks them down, okay? When it breaks them down, where does it go? It's caught in the filter system. So as you do your filter changes on a regular basis, you're removing all those particles. So it dumps the air in, and it's bringing it back. So you're recirculating the air.
In relation to these number of minutes for the ionization process to kill molds, bacteria, and viruses, how long does it take, would you guess, and say the auditorium, just use that as an example, how long does it take to recirculate all that volume of air, breathable air that's in there through this system? Any thoughts on that? Or I know that's a really difficult question.
That would be a difficult question without actually looking at the unit and seeing the size of the unit and what the CFM is. But
Well,
typically it's, the rule of thumb is, I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 air exchanges, like every 30 minutes.
5 every 30 minutes?
Yeah, typically that's about what happens. There's like 5 air exchanges.
We won't put that in the notes.
Don't put that in the notes. Don't quote
Yeah, we're not gonna hold you to that. My point was being, based on the volume of air in say that auditorium, and we're talking about it has to be exposed to ionization for so many minutes to kill so many viruses. With our recirculation of that, or is this 80 and 90, 99% gonna be effective? So it goes through, got to recycle 4 or 5 times, and is that what you're talking about as far as this reaching this 99% effectiveness as
Yes,
far
sir.
as killing it?
Yes, sir. Constant volume, constant air exchanges. And then over a period of time, you're really treating the air, is what it
Okay.
comes down to.
And so this works obviously all night long when students aren't there.
Yeah.
So they should come into a building that is free of these particles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
And it's not just in the air, sir, it's also, there was another part here, I'm not real sure where it was at, but if you look at that, you'll find that, it also takes care of surfaces. Okay, so it says ionization technology is proven to reduce the spread of the virus by 99% airborne and 80% on surfaces within 10 minutes.
Well, that's pretty strong in conjunction with what we're doing on deep cleaning with all the
The
things you
sprayers
spray.
we have, yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the night, we have our custodians spray down, or we do that with the buses. Obviously, that's different with buses, but it's the same technique, is you just let it dry. Yeah.
Now, that was a difficult question. You did a very good job of explaining it so even I could understand it, and I appreciate that. But that information is very helpful. I appreciate that.
I think this information is good for y'all to have. That's why we wanted to make up the brochure. It's certainly something that, you're thinking about the children and the people that work in that environment, and you're taking the most advanced steps in technology that you can possibly take in a reasonable amount of money.
This is a real loaded question, so don't feel like you have to answer it.
Okay.
Let's say we go with Casto, and we'd have to start with the middle school, high school, because we brought in 3 extra grades. We're going to school 5 days a week starting in March. Let's say you guys could start Monday. I know that's not gonna happen.
Right.
But if you started Monday, how long does it take you all to get that installed at that school building, just that one?
I would think probably about 3 or 4 days.
So within a week? then,
Yeah, it's
right?
pretty quick. Yeah, we got a guy and a helper, he comes in
That's good
and
information.
typically we get with the guys in maintenance.
I'm not gonna hold you to that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking at a ballpark right now.
It's pretty
because
quick.
We're looking at going 5 days a week, and that's the building with the most concern, because we took 3 grade levels and put it into that facility with 4 other grade levels, so.
It's pretty quick.
Okay.
And I think the way that some of those units are set up with all the ductwork up on the roof, that might be something that we do on that ductwork up on the roof. So we're not in the classrooms.
Right.
So we can coordinate that. We can coordinate that with y'all or whatever needs to be done. We work in the schools, Fayette County school system in Kanawha County. We just got that yesterday in Kanawha County schools. This is a step that they're taking because you've got paperwork and you've got proof that you've brought something on board to deal with, not just the virus, but things in the future.
Flu
So
virus.
it's not a waste.
Flu virus.
Huh?
Flu virus.
Flu virus.
Yeah,
Flu virus.
a lot of things across the level.
Yes.
So that's,
You say low maintenance or maintenance friendly. What,
Nothing.
I see on the pamphlet that it's a matter of wiping down when you change the filter. Is this something that's going to require, a crew to come in yearly and check, or?
No. When they change the filters, there's like a little device that'll stick out through the ductwork, like a probe. It doesn't need any kind of sterilization or nothing, but basically what they're saying is take a rag, wipe the dust off of it. That's all that has to be done.
They go up in the ductwork.
Yeah. I know you all are probably familiar with, maybe somebody has had one in their home. Do you remember electronic air cleaners where you could hear them popping and cracking? It's kind of what's taking place, although there's no noise.
That's good.
Yeah, but you could see what was happening there, and you pull them out, and of course, that all was collected on the filter, and of course, you had to wash the cells. You know, so basically, you're just like corn dust. I don't know your maintenance, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
no, go ahead.
I don't know your maintenance schedule on your filters. We do the filters every 3 months, every quarter down there in Fayette County and most of our school systems.
Okay. Are there any questions by any other members or anyone in the room that you'd like to address to Mr. Riefenbark?
I appreciate you doing this, cause I'd rather someone like you come in and speak, nothing against Mr. Widows or myself, but we went to school to educate children and not deal with ductwork and HVAC stuff, and I know I've worked with your company and you guys do a great job, and, that's why I told Eric, I said, you might wanna check out Casto, cause, you know, it's good to get more people to come in here and bid it out, cause, I know you guys usually come in pretty good, and you also have great customer service, so you doing this today is good customer service for our people to know what's going on.
Not a problem.
Thank you for doing this.
He has the information on the 3 schools, and I also made some adjustments in price, so that way you all can get into the area that you need to where you don't have to go through a big hoopla with a bunch of sealed bids and things like that. It's a pretty straightforward little thing, and I know the process at the schools. I deal with it all the time. And so the easier I can make it for you all, and then you can just say, let's just do this. So if you make a decision, all I'll need is those papers signed, the 3, and I'll take a picture and we get it scheduled. My best guess would be probably 3 to 4 weeks to get the stuff in and get you scheduled.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, sir.
We appreciate it.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you so
your
much.
time.
Thank you. And you still live in Summers County, sir?
I still live in Summers County. I live up Brimstraw Ridge
So
Road.
we
I've
give
been-
you guys discounts, what I heard, maybe?
Well,
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
One thing I'd like to say is I became an account manager right about the week that you all put everything out to bid for the high school. And so I was unaware of it at that particular time. But once an engineer draws up the specs and plans for Jumping Branch, I'd like to have someone reach out to y'all. I'd like to have an opportunity to see those specs and plans and possibly put a bid in.
I'm sure Mr. Witters and Superintendent Ward will do that.
Good.
We
Thank y'all
appreciate
for
you.
your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, Mr. Witters, you got anything else you wanna talk about?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, the only other thing we really need to talk to you about is, I have, Mr. Polly on a Zoom call, and, Candace Helms with the city, and then Mr. Polly, I think, has, maybe an architect or 2 with him, so I'm gonna see.
When we come back, I have a question to ask you about the RFPs on this. Okay?
All right, I'll have you try to get them going there, so we can.
All right.
Go ahead with your question then, while he's getting at it.
You could put the RFPs out without our approving, you put out, and then you bring them back to us, correct?
Yeah.
And are you close to a point where you want to put out RFPs for this ionization?
Yes.
And so you probably wouldn't be ready for us to approve it or deal with it by the next board meeting next week, would you?
No, but, the other situation that we're looking at is through the ESC. Jason Butcher, he can do RFPs and then we can contract through the ESC and do it that way. Ms. Harley kind of heard how that works. He gets the 3 bids, and then we go through him, and then we're finished with it. It's like with proximity with our online schooling that we do. He did the RFP, we just bought it through Jason or the ESC. That way it's a little bit quicker. It's all legal. It's just, sometimes it's just easier for the cooperative to do it because other counties might jump in and he can get a better price. Like he did yesterday with, not yesterday, today's Friday, right? 2 days ago. Okay, 2 days ago, he talked about roofing supplies, and then the other one was a platform for technology. So he brings it into the superintendents and the board members that are on the council, and then he tries to bring it in where we can, like Sam's Club, you buy in bulk now because other counties are getting involved with it.
Do any members have any thoughts about this presentation? Do you think it's a viable project? How do you feel about it? Anybody wants to comment, go ahead and do that here right this moment. Any thoughts by anybody? If not, that's okay too.
I think it's a good.
I just wanna
deal.
make it so they can talk.
If it'll do that good.
Isn't this good PSV?
What he says, well, he was pretty clear to act on that. Superintendent Warville, I think the general consensus of the members is they like this presentation and we like this application. Since you can't have that ready this coming next week's regular meeting, and so keep in mind, if you feel like you need a special meeting so we can act on that, rather than have to wait 2 weeks delay on beyond,
Right.
let me know and we'll do that.
That's why I wanted to check with like Casto, and I'm sure other companies can say, well, it's gonna be about this amount of time. It's just nice to hear kind of a roundabout within a couple weeks is what I'm hearing versus months. Cause if you're talking months, you're in the summer now.
We don't, if this is a project you and your staff decide you wanna do, we don't wanna hold this up by 2 weeks because of the fact it's 2 weeks to our following meetings. You let us know what you feel like you need there.
Okay. What we have is, at the end of this, we have a calendar of 6 months from February to the end, to summer, that I'll hand out, but we'll get that at the end. And then Mr. Lester's gonna talk about technology, but we wanna chime in with, Mr. Pauly from Charleston, who's interested in the middle school and looking at maybe taking that project on and making it into a retirement community. And I don't wanna speak on his behalf, but I know Candace Helms is on as well. And if Mr. Lester can give them the opportunity to speak, and then we can try to make this work the best we can. But I told him with the weather conditions, as I know Huntington and Charleston's been hit harder than we have with ice. This is probably the best way to handle it. Plus, if you guys have any questions when we're looking at the property, to go and either gift or auction. I've talked to Bowles Rice, Mark D'Antoni, and I are working together. I gave him the deed of the last 100 years of who always had that property. I showed him an aerial map of the area, and then we'll have to work with the city if we end up handing that property over either through some kind of bill of sale with an auction or gifting it to a nonprofit. Either way, we have to make sure with the city, it's okay first to split the property up. That's the first question he asked, are you allowed to do that? And then the second one he's looking at is making sure the deed is clear that it doesn't go back to a reverter clause to some family. And so right now, from my eyes, I don't see that as a problem, but that's why you have an attorney look it over to make sure it's all on the up and up. Having said that, if we end up going to an auction, he will walk us through all that as well. So I want to let you know Bowles Rice is on it, and we've given him all that information. But having said all that, Mr. Pauly came in and met with us, Mr. Widows and myself, 2 o'clock on this past Monday, and he is interested in purchasing the property and making it a retirement community. So, Mr. Lester, you can let him know he can speak now.
Mr. Pauly?
Yes.
All right. And we have Candace Helms and Daniel Hart here online. I'm going to put you in front of the board here so they can see the Zoom call. And the volume's up pretty loud, so give me 1 second and I'll cut you guys loose.
You can give it to them. I want the board members to be able to hear it, so if you put it between maybe, yeah, there you go.
Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, my name is Doug Polly. I'm a developer out of Charleston. And I walked through the building, and I think it's a very, very good candidate to renovate into housing for the elderly, and particularly affordable housing. Affordable housing is where the rents are at a level that people who make 60% of the median income can live there. We would have to compete for the tax credits, but I think this proposal or this building would have a very good chance of getting tax credits. And that's how we get the financing and equity to do the renovation. Beautiful old school, and it's in a great location. We think, just on a preliminary look, the architect Daniel Lucas Hart thinks we may get 28 to 30 apartments in it. I would need an option to purchase or a purchase agreement. Our submission deadline is May 30th. And by August, we know if we've got the tax credits that we utilize for a portion of the equity. If I've gotten tax credits, I've done well over 60 deals. I've never not closed and got the deal built.
Do any members have any questions you would like to ask of Mr. Pauly regarding what he's discussing on the middle school building? Which I would add is not including the gymnasium or the cafeteria below. That is separated out. And you do understand that, Mr. Pauly? Could you hear me?
We would do a historic renovation, so we would keep the character of the school.
Okay.
Mr. Pauly, could you hear the question that Mr. Duncan asked about how we'll keep the gymnasium and the cafeteria below it? You know, on Monday how we talked that we would split that property up where we would keep part of the property and you'd get the rest of it if you'd be the purchaser?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, that's good.
And then the other question that our attorneys talked about, this is just for everybody to know, because this happened in Cabell County where he lives. Someone said they were going to renovate and have all these ideas, and the property was purchased, but then it never got renovated, and 20 years later it finally got torn down. Could you answer that question? Because one of the questions the attorney asked me, Mr. Pauly, is, let's say you're the one who would purchase the property. What is your track record in the past of making sure the development goes from purchasing it to actually making it into what you see? Because the worst thing that the board could have on them, as well as myself, is we sell it to an entity and they promised us all this and it never gets done.
Well, I've been a developer for many years. The key ingredient is a tax credit for the investors. As I say, I submit in May. The end of May is my deadline. Around the end of August, they come out with who wins. I've never closed and started construction and completed a deal that I received tax credits on. Because I got the financing, all I need is tax credits.
Is that tax credits from
Working with Mike Giolis to submit to the National Park Service and State Historic Office, which is also a key ingredient.
asking Mr. Warville, is that tax credits coming from the city and county commission?
Mr. Pauly, a question's been asked. Where does the tax credit come from?
It's a federal tax credits. It's administered by West Virginia Housing Development Fund.
Okay.
Okay.
The only thing I see, we'd have to have some kind of an assurance when we turn the property over that it's either done that way or it reverts back. Because I'm like you, I wouldn't want to see it sold and then somebody come in and do something different with it from what they were explaining.
Did you hear that, Mr. Pauly?
Yes, I will not purchase the property until we go to construction closing.
Okay.
We get the tax credits, which would be in late August. Then we would begin preparing drawings, get the title work done, getting all the documents A through Z, bringing in an investor for the tax credits, and then we go to the closing table. And at that day that we close the construction loan is when we would buy the property. So we would, at that point, 10 days later, my contractor, which is a company called Jarrett Construction out of Charleston, would be doing the renovations, and he would start 10 days later. Jarrett is a fairly big contractor and very good about meeting their time deadlines.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions? Superintendent Worrell, anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is, when we're talking about purchasing, is this, where are we coming up with a price? Is there a minimum that he has to purchase the building for? Or is it
Do we
just,
get the price?
Is it a bid?
is it a bid, is it appraised?
You would do this, Mr. Polly, in your past working on these projects. We would have an auction and you would bid on it, correct?
I will not purchase. I would need a purchase contract from an entity. In the past, they did get, they'll sell the bid. You would sell the building to the city or another group affiliated with the city, and then they would deed it to me when I close, and I'd hand them the check. I don't buy property at auction because if I don't get tax credits, then that deal can, then at that point, you would be released from the purchase contract.
So, Candace, you're on there. Can you speak about that a little bit from the city's point of view? I think she's on there.
She is. She's muted.
Candace, can you hear us?
She's muted. I've asked her to mute. Ask her to unmute her.
Can you
mic.
unmute, Candace?
Got a phone number?
No, I don't have a phone number.
Candace, can you hear us?
She's on.
I've asked to unmute it. I will just see if I can. Mr. Polly, can you still hear me?
I can.
I wonder what's going on with Candace. Let's see. Well, I'm gonna call her on my phone. Right, until the light's not rehearsed. Hey, Candace.
Sorry, I was elsewhere.
Okay, go ahead. There was a question that was asked. Mr. Polly talked about he would not go through the auction process, but the city would have to acquire the property to do the tax credit. And I'll let Mr. Polly explain what he just said, and then I'll let you try to, I know you might not be able to answer all these questions, but that was a question that was asked, that he would not go through the auction process, but he would acquire it through the city through tax credit application.
Would you like me to get Chris real quick?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, hold on one second.
Can we hand these out, or already did that? Oh, it's alright. I'm up. Gives me something to do right now.
This is.
Can you take one and pass it down? just while they're getting together, this calendar is February, the 3 months that we're for now, and then the other 3 months on the backside. This just kind of gives you an idea of what we're planning and doing. So if anybody calls you, Mr. Duncan, could you please share that one paper with, you're taking them all.
Thanks, sir.
I'm just,
I was in the middle of the road.
I
Typically,
know.
teachers pass it out in the front, and you know to pass it back.
yeah, I understand. But you can, see February's, we're just moving on, but, you can see that we put target date 5 days a week, sports, I guess we put dart there. Did I misspell that, Marcia? Was that my misspelling or yours? They dart that day. It's the new sport, darts. But anyway, you can see that we put on SBA hearing. We have spring orders go out. We have Good Friday and Faculty Senate. We put Jude Harless on there on April on a Saturday that was spoke of earlier. This just gives you all kind of a skeleton of what we're trying to get accomplished in the next few months. Then on the back side is May, June, and July for summer stuff. So this just gives you guys help in case someone calls you and says, what's going on or what are we doing? I know as a board member, I'd want to be informed on, give me something what's going on the next 6 months. This kind of gives you an idea. Are you back, Candace?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, the floor is yours. And Mr. Polly, it's yours as well. You guys can go ahead and maybe catch up Candace and Chris on what you just told the board about how you would like to acquire the property.
Yes, what I would need is a purchase contract for a period of time. I would need it where I would need it to give me time to put together the application. Because if I don't get tax credits, then I would go to a bond sale to get the financing and equity that I needed. But if those don't work, I have no need for the building. So I would need a purchase agreement with the ownership entity that would give me X amount of months to purchase the building at a specified price. And during that option period, I would apply for the tax credits. If I would receive them, then we would start working towards closing. If we get the tax credits about August, we probably would go to construction in February or March. And then that's when I would purchase the building and begin the renovations. So if the Board of Education, I certainly don't know what they can and can't do, but if they have to sell it by bids, it could be, what I've seen is they deed it to another entity. A city has got buildings before, but they've been deeded to the city and the city sells them. It could be another group that's related to the city, a development group, a historic group that could be the holder of that building until we got to closing.
Doug, we're also bound by the same rules that the Board of Education would be. We would have to have a public auction or take bids for us to sell also.
Are you allowed to sell to cities without going to auction?
In other government entities, yes.
If it went to the city, then the city would sign a purchase contract with me for a specified price, and then we get the building that way. Now, I just bought a building from WVU, and they are not they're a kind of a quasi, but they're not a state agency. They sold it to me direct, and they went through a process. But most of the time I see the people selling to the cities or arm of some type of local government who then sells it to me.
That would be a question I would have to ask our attorney, but I mean, I'm with the understanding that anything that we sell has to be public auction or bid out. So I don't know that I can actually sell to you straight up.
Right.
I don't think I can do that.
I think I don't know, but I think you're right. My experiences is you're right.
Okay, so we maybe have, some other entity in the county or something that might be able to get around that, like, for
Historic
instance,
Society. Historic
maybe the
Society.
Hidden Area Foundation or some other place like that that could, sell it to you that way with a purchase contract.
We could have an auction start at $1
I'd have to ask our attorney, but I mean, I think the city would be willing to. We want to do something to get something happening with that million for sure.
Yes.
But that's a question I need to ask our attorney.
Okay.
Well, it looks like, we'll just wait for our attorneys. Chris can talk to his attorneys and we'll just have to go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you guys have any other questions for Mr. Polly?
I do not.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Mr. Polly, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your interest.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, looks like, Bowles and Rice will direct us in the way we need to go. We'll just go from there.
Yeah,
Do we have anybody else make any presentations?
Did you have anything for transportation or special ed or food? Pretty good? Okay.
I move that
The
we
only-
take,
there's
I move that we take a 5-minute
We can
recess.
do that. The only thing I have, and it's gonna be just one more, and it's just Mr. Lester with technology, but if you wanna take a 5-minute
I move we
break,
take a 5-minute recess.
that's fine.
Any second?
Do you want-
I'll second.
do you want-
All right.
professional development. And teachers have been offered extensive trainings on both September and January on all of the software suite and services that we offer. Substitutes were given 2 days to come in and also get a basic classroom technology trainings. We added some support to parents. We sent out a start guide for Chromebooks. Some parents are more familiar than others, but you have a lot of grandparents. You have a lot of situations where just some of the basic stuff can help them in that start guide for the Chromebooks. It also tells them how to get to live grades and a lot of other things. We did do tech nights. We've offered a couple of those where parents can come out and get help. We also have a monthly technology newsletter that Ms. Christy Schaefer and the tips all contribute to. And that monthly newsletter was called Technically Speaking, but it was always faculty aligned, but now there's a specific parent version of that newsletter. Network-wise, the state parks and libraries got Kids Connect through West Virginia Department of Education. Schools in 8 community locations received our hotspots through the Bobcats Connect. Hardware-wise, AV equipment was purchased and installed to assist the high school, middle school absorb the classrooms that was added and the teachers. Second grade have received their device replacements for the year. 8th grade is still on back order. We have a stopgap that we've been using where we've converted Windows machines to Chromebooks. It's not perfect, but it's working. The supplier that won the bid for the Chromebooks are still, they received $23,000 last week, but they're still $130,000 back ordered. Software, we purchased Google Enterprise Enhancement approved by the board, Cami, which allows annotation remotely on devices, and News ELA is a reading across the curriculum service that teachers have access to now. On the money side of things, other than our local funds of Step 7B, which I will not go into here, but we also receive a Tools for Schools state grant that's dedicated to technology. We had $4,500 left over from last year, where our total is just shy of $60,000 of Tools for Schools. When we always set aside a portion of the Tools for Schools for our E-rate requests. We get 85% funded on E-rate. So when we request infrastructure technology at the school level, we only pay 15% of that bill. But it's a long process. You have to jump through a tremendous amount of hoops. Mr. Widows isn't in here right now, but we've all learned a lot from jumping in and learning to swim with the E-rate filings. But the E-rate years are behind our fiscal year. So the federal E-rate year of 2019 came out of this year's 2021 funding. So $15,800 was our portion. And what that's going to do, this equipment will be installed in the next couple months, and it will replace the main wiring rack in every school with new network switches that are antiquated. The other $43,900 was the 16 interactive view boards that was purchased for the middle school and high school teachers to make sure that they have equitable classroom equipment across the board. Everybody has the same equipment, everybody has the same access to that teaching resource. We did not file 2020 federal E-rate submission. Some may ask, well, why wouldn't you do that? You only pay 15%. Well, E-rate is in 5-year funding increments. So we have an allotment for the county for 5 years. We know we have a new construction that we are asking for. So I've held back that E-rate funding to make sure if and when we get a new construction, the network infrastructure will have funding available for it if that's not included in the $1.8 million or $8.1 million. 2021 going forward, E-rate installs that I just mentioned that we receive funding for will go in the next couple of months. We need to file a waiver to move the E-rated equipment that's currently sets in the old middle school, and my recommendation is to move a portion of it to Jumping Branch to remove them onto a equal network as far as Wi-Fi as the other schools, and the remaining will be held for the new middle school wing. Moving the network hub. Currently, our hub for our county network, our 2 gig connection back to Building 6 in Charleston, sets at the middle school. It will have to move, obviously, if we no longer occupy that building. So in our E-rate request for this coming year, as far as our internet service, we bid it out, and we also bid out the move the hub to Hinton area. That puts it closer to the Suddenlink terminal, and it's also central to the county. We are installing, thanks to Mrs. Jones and working with me with Title I funding, blue interactive walls will be installed at Jumping Branch, Talcott, and Hinton Area Elementary. We know those schools don't have true gymnasiums. They have multi-purpose rooms, and Jumping Branches would be in the cafeteria. These are going to be really, I think they're going to look and be used really well. It'll take up the entire end wall where the coolers are at Jumping Branch and be a really added piece to their school. If anybody has any question about what a loo is, there's a slight video on there, but if nobody wants to know, but it makes the wall completely interactive. It's ran by lasers and a lighting system and a sound system. STEM camps. Christy Schaefer is working. She'll report to you on the Verizon STEM camp, but we also have the Harless project, and we're doing desktop replacements for many of our staff members that have some antiquated machines, not only here in the central office, but at the school levels. Any questions?
You got any more, or is that it?
That's it.
I'm getting some complaints about Chromebook downloading. Is there a problem, or am I just getting false complaints?
Well, I need to know the context. When they mean downloading, are they talking about getting video content at home, or are they talking about
downloading their grades and their work?
My initial knee-jerk reaction would be that
Internet speed?
we can't. I can't. Just like I helped a board member and their family over last week or earlier in this week. And there's little things that you can do to determine whether it's your upload speed or your download speed, and we could pinpoint out that it was that particular person's upload speed that was limiting a certain Google Meet session. But if you're having trouble viewing their content, like for instance, if they go to live grades and they can't get into live grades, that's part of that the start guide. Also, at any point, if they tell their teacher, the teacher in our support mechanism is supposed to report that directly to the tips. Okay. And the tips will decide, is this a teacher issue where the grades aren't getting loaded, or is this a technology issue to where they can't actually, they don't have an account, or there's something else going on, a browser incompatibility. I'll at least put out there that more than 50% is probably their internet connection, because helping people get into live grades we offered family sessions at the beginning of the year.
Nobody showed up.
Yeah, where we would personally help them get into live grades in their Google Classrooms and stuff. But if you're trying to download videos that are saved from a class, that takes a lot of bandwidth. And in this county, we know, even if you're on one of our hotspots, like Forest Hills connection is very slow. Some of the hotspots are much faster, but it's difficult to troubleshoot. I went to a wellness check with Mr. Widows previously this last week, and did some of the steps where that's in the Chromebook guide where it states, turn off the other devices in your house. They had a PlayStation installed. We turned that PlayStation off to where it was not talking on the network. We also turned the parents' iPad off and their phone, and all of a sudden their network connection doubled. So, but that's one out of the 1,500 children. You can't go to everybody's house and everything from where are you putting your wireless access, how many devices you have on it, are you on Suddenlink, Frontier, but upload and download speeds, they're different. They can run the WVNet, and that's in the Chromebook guide, how to go to your speed test and test your upload and download. And that bit of information going back to their teacher or the tips or myself, because if anybody wants to call here, I'll talk to them about internet all day long. I've probably already talked more than you guys wanted to hear. But I'm going to guess it's internet, but I'm not saying it can't be a software compatibility issue as well. Now, the state's had some filtering issues this week, and I was just emailing here. You saw my email up before you guys came back from your break. We're having issues with OneDrive, Office 365, and the state filtering, and it's getting caught. Specifically Suddenlink right now, where even our staff members are having trouble getting to OneDrive. I was just talking to one staff member there and sending her the email to show where we've been talking to the State Department about these, and it's being seen across the state. So you're trying to troubleshoot something, and we know the state has a little issue with Office 365 right now. I doubt that would impact live grades. Could, because it's they're all connected as far as, it's all going through, their devices all go through the state filter proxy because we put relay on those devices, which allows us to attempt to eliminate a lot of the adult type content.
And sometimes I think it's just that specific day, because there's days when Sam can be logged on and he has no problem, and I can be doing a Zoom meeting and and there's no problems whatsoever, and then there's days when we have to turn off every device in the house, and it's still spotty, and there's nothing different.
So one thing, we've got all of this ice, and then we've had multiple incidences of ice and tree limbs, and then you can go down the road here, just going down toward Pipestem when I drive home. You can see the line, the trees laying on the telecom lines. Well, that's the telecom line. It's either Suddenlink or Frontier in this area, and there's trees laying all over them. And so even on my internet connection, I drove down the road. I don't have power this morning. I was trying to find it. I found if I find the pole for the power company where the fuse is blown, the little fuses on top of the poles, if I tell them where it is, it helps them. So I went out down the mountain, found the fuse. Also, I noticed that the telecom line, the piece that keeps the telecom line, is also torn and down in the road. So all of this has taken an impact. We've seen even with board meetings when we were remote, our communications wasn't as good when the weather was bad. I think it's going to take us a while to recover from this ice.
Yeah, sure will. So they can either call you or call their teacher.
Give us a call. I mean, the teacher will pass it on to the tips if they can't get in the live grades, and that will set things in action. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Lester? Okay.
We just have a couple more items to go through, and we don't have any more other than that, but I don't know if, Mr. Lester, can you pull up real quick what the middle school, high school, just one more time to show you guys. Next month, what we're gonna do is present to them, the high school, middle school. One thing that we're gonna attack right away with, my presentation is we've already taken from Peter to pay Paul, because they're gonna talk about the utilization. The utilization at the high school currently is underused. The utilization at the old middle school was underused, and when you put 6 through 12 in there, now we're getting closer to 90% utilization. Now, having said that, what I need to do is just attack that and say, but we've had to, with this renovation, we're going into the high school and taking from the high school to put in with the middle school, And we're not asking for a whole lot of money, because if you would build a brand new 6 through 8 building for the size, or for the population we have, it would cost $16 to $18 million. We're asking for 8.2 just to add on to the backside, and that wouldn't hurt our pattern of busing or for parents coming in and out. The only thing is, it would enhance it a little bit better, and basically, I'm just giving you a quick elevator speech. That's kind of what we have to go with. We can't talk about the school closing. We can't talk about how we need the money more than anybody else. We have to just basically focus on what we need in this county to make it work. And we'll tie that into CTE programs, and we'll tie that in with the needs of our children. When you look at one building for the secondary, and we can also throw in there that we're doing other programs to help with our kids, with community schools, to SRO programs, and then, like I mentioned before, career and college readiness as we move forward. So basically, that's that in a nutshell. And I shared that with you guys before. We can start to put that out for public so they kind of understand what we're going for, because I think some people are confused, like, how are you going to get all those kids in there, and how are you going to get another cafeteria, another gymnasium? Would you all feel like that would be a better way to just put out their proposal for the 6-8 edition now, or do you want me to hold off on that? You guys get calls from people. You tell me what would be better right now.
I get questions all the time about, well, where are you gonna do all this? And people who don't look at it closely like we do all the time, they have a hard time visualizing it. But I don't know, should we wait before we put too much out there about it until after we find out if they're gonna give us the money?
I would feel better to wait till
Yeah,
after March, April, and then maybe May, June, we can start promoting it. If we secure the monies, that'd make me feel a lot better. But I know it's not about my feelings. You guys as elected officials, you get the calls, and I wanna make your life a little bit easier as we move forward too with this. I can wait, it's no hurry on this.
Anybody have any thoughts? Any members have any thoughts on how you want Mr. Warlow?
If anybody calls, it might not hurt to go ahead and give it to them. I don't think we wanna go out and
Okay,
go wide open with it, but I don't see any problem either way.
okay.
We're not trying to hide anything.
No, but we don't wanna promise either.
No, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Ms. Farley,
Ms.
what'd you
Farley,
say?
you gonna
I follow the policy of when in doubt, don't.
say?
Well, I would,
If you feel like it would be more advantageous to wait, wait.
Okay, that's my thoughts on it, but I also work for you guys, and I wanna my job is to make your job a little bit easier, dealing with these phone calls, but I also want to not incite people and calm them down, because sometimes you get in a situation where people fill in the void because they think they know more about facilities. And let's be honest, when this was brought to our attention, they didn't take up much of a footprint, and I was pretty impressed with how they could make this happen for our kids. So we'll just hold off, but if anybody asks, we can say, here's a picture, a proposal, put your cell phone away, like I did with you guys the first time.
well, the calls I get is, how much is it gonna cost you to buy Bass Lake? Because that's where you're putting this new school, is it? And I have to explain this. Let's just let it go with this. When you get this money, Mr. Wardle, okay? When you get it,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a project here that everybody's gonna be, and the county's gonna be tickled to death with, so on a as-to-know basis, say what you feel like you need to at
Okay.
the moment, and that's where we go with
I
it.
just
That'd be
didn't
my
want you guys
position.
to be put in a box, that's
No.
all I'm doing.
No, we won't, well,
Okay,
And I agree with Mr. Angel, you know, people have questions about it, and if this will some way make them feel better, as parents, they're gonna have questions.
yeah,
I see no reason in giving them, you know, the information
Okay.
as you know it, as long as they understand that that's as you know it.
right, cause what I don't want people to do is they start going, well, where's the restrooms, and who gets these classrooms, and all, it's like, gosh, guys, that's later on down the road. But I just wanted to get your feelings on this, and I figured you'd go down this road the same way I am, is just let's hold off until we get all this done in March and April. So hopefully April we have a good headache. We have a project. That's the headache I would like to take on. But anyway, I just wanted you guys to know that. Then the other thing is, as Mr. Lester flips to the proposal for the board office to go to, this is the cafeteria underneath the gymnasium. I have to get up and move so I can walk you through this kind of, and I don't want to take up too much time. But, sorry guys, my back's to you, but this doorway right here, this has a nice easement to it for anybody with handicap issues with walking or wheelchair. That comes straight off the road. Right here's our double doors, so people could come through the carport to board meetings and go right through here. And there's the 5 chairs with the desk to have this as the boardroom. When people come in, you'll have one person here and one person there. This would most likely be a Karen or a Tanya here, because people could come in this door or in this door, and you'd have people there to greet them. This area here, you got all these windows here. We're just gonna put walls up and make offices out of all that. We will leave this door open, but we will close this door off. Just like this hallway here goes all the way through. Talking to the fire marshal, he said, you can put a doorway there, but you already got double doors there, and maybe Charlie would like that. He even knew what I was thinking, giving Charlie more storage for a hallway area, because we know that Charlie's being encroached on now. The restrooms, the proposal would be, this is the restroom already. We just have one big restroom area. You put 2 doors there to go in the restroom area. This is a storage room. Put a door on it. We'll put a conference room in there, and then when you have executive sessions, this is literally a heavy, solid wood door with all block. There's your soundproof wall building. That would suffice for that. And then you have these 2 areas. This is where the built-in walk-in freezer and fridge area, that would be taken out and put in a back room here. That could be 2 offices. These could be 2 offices. You put a wall there, and all this kitchen stuff here, the only thing we'll keep is this little elbow here. Everything else is either going to the other schools, or we're gonna put it in the auction. Right now, there's a big hood here that the fire marshal said that'd be a great auction item, 10 to 15 grand for just that hood. And I don't think we need it, so therefore, let's auction that off. There's quite a bit in there that we could auction off. Anyway, this is the basic concept. I don't know how much it's gonna cost. We're trying to keep the cost down. What we could do, Charlie said this area right here is gonna be at least 10 grand because of any time you deal with plumbing, you guys know how that works. What we could do is just make this a ladies' restroom and worry about that later. Guys could go in there, but as far as I'm concerned, there's less guys. We can go upstairs to the restrooms by the gymnasium, and we can go up there if we have to try to save some money somewhere. I know Mr. Lester said we're going to use about 10 grand to update the technology, because you got new phone system and you got wires you got to run. But between construction and electrical, this is going to be at least, I would say, around a $50,000 on the low end. I mean, I don't know until I get some bids in, because materials right now with COVID have gone up. So if anybody's gone to Lowe's for a 2x4 or 2x6, let alone sheeting and drywall, it's not what the price used to be a year ago. So
How big's that conference room?
pretty good size.
Okay.
That's not 20 by 20, is it?
This
Oh,
room,
no. I would guess
It's
it's
about
about
half of this room.
about half of this room,
I would say about half this room.
which is plenty of room.
Now, to give you more of an idea before everybody gets too excited, then we could have the kindergarten or pre-K leave the high school facility. Now that's a true 6-12. Charlie said that the equipment there for the playground, we'll just move it over to this playground, and then the people who are over here for, this would become a STEM room for our STEM initiative, and Christy Schaefer could take this over. My office could be a title room here for Linda's office. That's 2 title rooms, and the 3rd title could be Lauren's office area. So now you got 4 title teachers with the title kids. They just come over here and get their education, and then our nurse and Raynell Medical, or anybody else I'm missing that could come over here, would free up all the room over there for kids and teachers now. And then if kids needed that special help, if they don't feel good, you know, you come over here, you're away from the group, and it'd just be a little bit easier that way. This door out front here, could be, you know, locked at all times. If anybody needs to get over here, they can go to the main office first, and then this back door here, we could make it more of a glass opening too, but those are those little logistics you have to work out. But we would be freeing up room now at the 612 facility, because let's be honest, I can't have Mr. Hartwell teaching on a stage in the auditorium. He needs to have a classroom, so that would get that teacher over to one of those rooms, and we would be able to still handle the CTE facility with the early childhood. Early childhood students can either be bused to those elementaries in the morning. We're gonna have to look at the schedule. So one thing I would do is, with the schedule, is make sure the kids could be bused to one of the elementaries, not the same group all the time. So if I'm an early childhood student, I'm not gonna see one group all the time, because that's not how schools work. You can go to all three of our elementary schools and see how each school does things the same and different, and get a different taste for public education. So that program is not gonna go away. We just have to clear up space for 612 and not have the pre-K out there anymore. It's not that I have anything against it, but let's be honest. You gotta look at it from 30,000 feet. How do you get a pre-K 12 system and move everybody around? Plus, I would think people would be excited that you had people there in the middle of town now with a facility being used. And we would also now probably not be intimidating to this building here, because now the superintendent and all his staff isn't sitting on the same property. And now you got parking for them. And then busing as well would be a little bit easier to come through here. But that's the proposal that we have right now.
If we do away with the pre-K to high school, what's that gonna do to those students that are in early childhood as far as their classroom time? Because we're gonna have, regardless of where we take them, we're gonna have a half hour of bus time in there.
Well, there's a couple different ways of doing it. First of all, when you look at the schedule, you could make it where it's towards the beginning of the day or towards the end of the day. And what you can do is, if high schoolers do drive to school, what you can do is, if we start at Talkit tomorrow morning, those kids that drive themselves to the high school could just drive to Talkit, get their education, and then finish up at the high school. You can do that, but they can't be driving other kids though. It's only if, it's just like you're going to school, and it's a simulated workplace. So those kids are part of that. So they can't just take other kids with them.
Right.
We would also provide busing too as well. So, you know, it is gonna be a little bit of a loss of time there, but, you know, we're also now freeing up that building as a 612 comprehensive facility.
I think it's important to note too that this move and this redesign and utilization of space is a good selling point to the SBA when you go down there in March. And I know that's something you've already got worked in presentation, because we're utilizing facilities.
But I can't argue the time, because you're right. I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and say, oh, it's gonna be perfect, it'll work out just right. But you do have the electrical program as well as carpentry or FFA. They go on trips to their, it cuts in. You just have to be able to schedule your time a little bit better. But what I like about it is now, if I was a student like I am today as an education major, I could go to 3 different schools and see 3 different ways on how to these, because that was always an eye-opening experience for me, to see an inner city school versus a suburban school versus a rural. Now I know this is all rural, but you still have different principals, you have different personalities, secretaries, teachers. It'll be more of a real world application, but I'm not gonna argue any point where I can't argue. I can't. It's like telling someone to go out of retirement and come back to work. How do you argue that point? You just don't. So I don't disagree with your concern there.
They previously, before they had it there, because Jimmy drove that bus for a while, they would bring them down here, and I think till lunch.
Did that happen? Yeah.
They only brought them to Hinton area though.
Yeah. It was only in Hinton area.
But we could start with Hinton area and see how that works, and then, you know, go to the other 2. But at the end of the day, that's just getting into the scheduling again and talking to the principals and working that out. But it's nothing that we don't appreciate that program, because I want to continue it. It's just I gotta create some space. And I know someone could say, well, you're only creating 1 room. Well, 1 room gets 1 teacher off that stage in that auditorium, because we're gonna have to go full time there, and that auditorium is gonna be used for, you know, speakers of all kinds that come in there, and FAFSA with the counselors and some of this other stuff that goes on in your day-to-day operations. So I get it.
Well, I'm always a troublemaker.
Nah.
If all this took place, would there be any chance of closing this area down where you're driving around the building here and maybe turning part of that into a pre-K playground?
Oh, you're just giving me more ideas. What I, honestly, if you really want the truth of it, I'm trying to, on the back side of the building there, getting a multi-purpose room. I'm just trying to get the blessing from the state to use COVID money to build onto Talcott, or not Talcott, excuse me, Talcott has a gym that could be a multi-purpose, but also Jumping Branch and here to have a multi-purpose gymnasium type setting, so, yeah. Matter of fact, if the city could make that a one-way, I'd really like it.
Oh, yeah.
I know you'd like it because of busing, right? They could come right up here, unload right on that whole street, but right now, this two-way, it makes it tough, it's tight. The bus drivers, it's a bus rodeo for them to come through. The other day, watching one of the drivers, I thought, oh, you're talking about that guy earlier on your road? I thought, oh, is this gonna be just please. Because students were on the bus at that time. You know, it's always worse when a student's on a bus and there's a fender bender, because then it's a lot of paperwork, and it's not always about paperwork, you know. When it's in a parking lot, it's like, that could have been prevented. So, the other thing I want to throw out at you guys real quick is, we have a water situation at the high school. Charlie's on it. We don't know if it's a meter issue or it's I'll turn it over to Lauren. She'll articulate it better than I will. Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, so I was reviewing the cost of utilities, and I guess it was almost 10 years ago, the county went in with ESG and had this energy savings project. Well, whenever I was going through everything, and also trying to look at ways that we could spend these CARES funds, what we could spend it for, what we couldn't spend it for, we have baseline numbers that ESG said we should be meeting. So as I'm starting going through utilities, I see that our water bill at Summers County High School is almost $60,000 a year. And whenever I saw that compared to the middle school and even Hinton area, it's almost triple that amount. So ESG says our baseline should be around 20. We're spending almost 60, 65 a year. Went to Mr. Widow's, him and Charlie have checked it out. Not so sure that it was a leak in the beginning. Charlie went back to look at it again this week. Yesterday, whenever I was here, Charlie came in and said that the previous night that the high school had used almost 7,000 gallons of water, and he was not sure where it went. They went through the building. He came in again this morning, said he has turned off a couple different areas. 4,000 to 5,000 gallons was used last night. So we have a huge issue. He was going to pull some deals. He was going to talk to our local person with the water company, see if he could come down there, just look, make sure he's seeing the same thing that Charlie's seeing, and then we're probably going to request that the meter be replaced, because we are having that bill alone is huge. So that's the situation that we have with water. Charlie's saying that he does not think that it's a leak, because we would see that money or that
Much
water
water should be showing
somewhere.
up.
We would have shown up. I also asked if it was part of the cooling tower, because we have a cooling tower. He's checked that. That's not part of it, because it had been turned off. So our water's not even going into there at this point in time. So, you know, with all that, we're trying to work on that, and that could be a good bit of money that we're not spending out.
Stan's been in our water and football field.
That's not true. We use river water to do that. I want everybody to know that. We have a pump that the football program bought.
Remember that list I started out with? I'm gonna have 25 water.
No.
I know that.
I'm glad y'all have a good time at my expense. I enjoy it too. Mr.
We do,
Warble.
and it's free.
Mr. Warble. Yeah, it doesn't cost you a thing.
No.
The water company is responsible for the meter. We're responsible for the meter to the building. Would that be correct? Would anybody think that's right? That's my understanding.
It is on residential. I don't know about commercial.
I don't know either. But if we find out that that meter is their responsibility, if that meter's been malfunctioning and they've been having a windfall of payments from us, I think we need to pursue that to see if we can't get some reimbursement, because that doesn't make any sense. I'm glad you found that, Ms. Crook, and certainly I see y'all are on it. But that's, somebody's responsible there. And that much water, we see that water somewhere, be in the building, up on the grounds or somewhere. There's something wrong there, and I'm glad you're all on top of it. And that's, but if we can pursue anything to where we get money back, we certainly want to do that.
And then there's only one other thing, I don't know if Brian wants to handle or Lauren, but we're looking at some purchasing with, box truck and refrigerator truck and.
Well, I'll talk about
Okay.
some of them. We use a van, the warehouse clerk does, to move food and supplies around the county. And we learned early on, it's been fixed a little bit, but that van will not pass USDA inspection the next time because of the rust in it. You can't have rust and food next to each other. So we thought this might be a good time. Brian did all of the legwork, getting the specs, and then I put together a RFP for a refrigerated van. That bid will be opened on Monday at 10. We only got one response, and I hope to have that on the board meeting agenda Thursday. We also have a bid out for a box truck. So the refrigerated van, of course, was gonna have food, but we've got like custodial supplies, and when they go to Charleston to get different things, the box truck, because the van was doing double duty. So there's a box truck bid out. That opening will be March 1st, so it'll be on hopefully the board meeting after that for your approval. And then I also wanted to say that this is every 3 years we have to do food and kitchen supplies bid. We are in a co-op with 7 other counties, and we are in the process of doing that bid. It's going out Monday, and sometime in April you'll be asked to approve what our co-op chooses for the next food company and supplies. He had another one too, I think.
Also, just looking at another, during all this going on, we're looking at also trying to replace another vehicle, the board car. And I don't know at this time whether it's gonna be, we're looking on state bid at a truck, a Ford Ranger, and Lauren's working with them to see if that's gonna go through or we're gonna have to bid it out. But, trying to get some of the vehicles updated while we can. We're starting to nickel and dime us to death with most of them being 20 years old. Over a few 100,000 miles on some of them, so it's a good time to get them while we can.
The funding for the box truck and refrigerator can use it with that CARES Act money. Now, the Ford Ranger or whatever vehicles you buy will be through transportation, so that's a 95% we get reimbursed for that, but that doesn't happen overnight. That's a 2-year process. So when you see the funding source, when we put CARES or transportation, at least you know the transportation will be, that takes a while to get back, but the CARES, we're just gonna take advantage of that situation. But we're looking at getting rid of the van with an auction and that, the Ford, pickup, Ford. Taurus, sorry. Now you make fun of me, Mr. Duncan, but, that's what we're looking at doing to update our fleet as we move forward. So we just wanted to give you guys, I know it's a lot today. Within 3 hours, we've given you an awful lot to chew on. But as a board, I think these work sessions, every so once in a while we need to have so you can answer questions to the public instead of saying, I'll have to check, or you gotta follow the chain of command. I get all that stuff, guys, but it's nice to know how we are financially doing and where we're going with the money and how we're trying to protect it. Because you see 61 students is quite a bit of money that we're losing. The question I would ask if I was a board member is, so what are you doing to attack that problem? And I can answer it this way. We're looking at creating a 3 Rivers Academy. We can use CARES Act money to get an online company like a Proximity. I doubt I'm gonna go with them. I'm not too happy with them, and Ken can tell you I came out of my skin yesterday, and we'll just leave it at that, right, Mr. Lester? So my point is when you take that CARES Act money to start this up, we can maybe bring in all these people that said, I'm going to homeschool or somewhere else. And then they're considered a Summers County student, but they're just not on our property. It's just another school we have, but it's in the virtual world. And we can maintain that through working with Mr. Lester and the 3 tips. So that's the way we're gonna try to attack it, because public education is under attack still, and I think a lot of our educators are really good at talking to people and letting them know that your kids are safe with us and everything's gonna be okay. But when you have a few out there in each county and each state that say stuff that is detrimental to our day-to-day operations, which is taking care of our children, you saw today what the money does to help support these kids, and some of the teachers and educators are not helping the cause. They're scaring people away from us, and we can't do that. And we try to help those people out to say, please, I know you're concerned about COVID, but when you do this, you're hurting the system, and when you do that, you might not lose your job, but someone else could, because they're on the low end of that seniority list, and then we have to go through RIF and transfer season and get rid of people. Now, right now, we don't have to worry about that, but a year from now, I hope that we're getting these people back to school. And speaking of RIF and transfer, not only will we submit a letter, but I'll go to those people personally and let them know eye to eye, you're gonna be RIF'd, and explain it to them and answer their questions, because nothing's worse, and I've had this happen to me when I first taught, getting a RIF letter, and nobody talked to me. But they sent me a letter in the mail, that told me as an employee, you don't value me. And I will probably cry with them and feel sorry for them, or they'll probably just cuss me out. But that's my job, and I signed up for it, and I'm not being a martyr or a victim. I wanna see them eye to eye and tell them why we are doing and how we got to this point. It's not anything personal, it's just the way the business has to be run. And when you see 300,000 lost due to 61 less students, that's part of the problem. And we've had more than double this school year. We were at 45, now we're up to what, 90 some homeschool? That's a number there that says, well, there's 40 of the 60 maybe. You see what I'm saying? So we gotta try to bring them back. So if I'm a board member, that question you should ask me is, how are you gonna get them back? And that's one way. And the other way is to contact these people and say, we just want you back. And sometimes just on the phone telling people, hey, before you go to homeschool, I wanna give you a couple disclaimers. One, if you're on an IEP, you avoid it and you go back to that process of starting all over again. Number two is if you pull them out and you bring them back, we have to test them to put them in a grade that we see that they're in, not the one you think they should be in. So we're not scaring people, we just wanna educate them so they know they might wanna stay with us. But that's what we're trying to do to get our kids back in the school system as we move forward.
And that's through the Three Rivers Academy,
yeah.
where you could get people back in, get them involved in the good positive things that they would like to be involved in, and then it also increases our student enrollment.
Yes, and
Okay.
the Three Rivers, I'm still trying to remember the Three Rivers, as I think it's Bluestone.
Greenbrier, Bluestone, and New.
Yeah, I was almost there. I just wanna remember Bluestone. No, I knew that.
I got a question for you or Brian, either one. Why did you go with a Ranger and not a full-size truck?
Just, what we could find at the time, full-size trucks and something that was good on fuel. And it's a four-door, it's just the first thing we found only thing we found actually that was on state bid that.
I was on state bid.
That got, yeah.
These state bids, they say they'll get it to us, but we don't know when that get it to us. That one there, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, that one is an actual picture of they have it. Cause these others, they'll say, we'll get it, but you don't know when that will
I
get
mean,
it.
even when we put out RFPs for the other, I've had all the ones that we normally put it out to come back and say, we just don't have anything. We can't get anything. Right now we're trying, but parts, they're not building. You're looking at a year and a half, unless if you can find something, then good luck.
Well, I just figured, the difference in the money.
Yeah. No, I know, I understand.
You're right.
Is that everything from your end, Mr.
Is there
Morville?
anybody else that needs to? We've kept you here long enough, but I wanted to make sure you understood what was going on. You need to be informed.
Okay. Our next regular meeting is Thursday of next week at 6 p.m. in this room. Does any member have anything that they would like to ask the superintendent to place on the agenda? Because he'll be doing that today, Monday, and he can do it as late as Tuesday with that. So does anybody have anything that they would like to see on the agenda for next time? Superintendent Wargle, are you gonna have a discussion regarding school, as far as,
Do you guys
attendance?
want me to, have it on the agenda with, to vote to go back to school 5 days a week? Or do you just wanna say, okay, we're just gonna go back? Or do you wanna just put a stake in the ground and say, we approve to go back 5 days a week?
well, I don't know. Do you need a vote from this board about that? If you do, we'll certainly
Well, here's
make
my
agenda.
thoughts.
I wanna know what your thoughts are.
Here's my thoughts. There's variants out there right now, and we've been very fortunate. But if the variants start becoming an issue and we start seeing the numbers tick up, if we put a stake in the ground that says we made a board approval to go 5, I would just say we can discuss it and we can go back 5 days a week. But if numbers start getting crazy again, we can always go back to our blended model that we already have. That way, again, I don't want to put anybody in a corner, and then what people will probably get into is saying, well, you lied or misled. And I know that that gets out there a lot this school year because there have been so many changes. I mean, think back in August when we started this and trying to go somewhere, and then the governor says, you're not starting school till after Labor Day, and you gotta be done by Memorial Day. That stuff kind of comes, and I'm not blaming the governor, he has to do his job, and I get that. We just have to try to follow suit, so I don't necessarily think you have to make an approval of any sorts, but you guys could just voice your concern, and then I can let people know that we'll use this as a sliding scale with the numbers, because right now we are using DHHR map, and our county's been very fortunate to be green. If we start seeing that getting pretty bad, and we have these variants, we can always pull back and say, we're gonna go back to that remote 3 days a week and go to school 2 days a week.
Are we still gonna have the option for the parents to do virtual or?
What we're gonna do is, if you're option 1 or 2, you'll go to option 1, which is going back to school. If you have good internet connectivity, and this is what I have to do on my Sunday call this Sunday, is talk to your building principal, because the building principal and the teachers are gonna know if you've been really keeping up with the work virtually. If you have been, then we have option 3 to put you into, and that's proximity. Right now, with proximity, we do not have kindergarten, we do not have 4th grade, and we do not have 12th grade. So those 3 grade levels will need to go with option 1, or Ms. Jones is working on it with the State Department with West Virginia Virtual. So we will work with them on that other option, but what you get into, Mr. Angel, is people playing the system, and they're using COVID as, well, I just wanna just stay at home. You know, then I don't wanna get into being insensitive with people, but I tell people, I've talked to 4 different parents this week that are concerned about their son or daughter's health with asthma or whatever health condition. I say get a doctor's note, and we can put them in that other option, but we need to move. With CDC now saying going back to school is a safe area, and with our vaccines, we have a lot of staff that have gotten vaccines. Right now, we have around 160 that have had at least their first shot. Well, 140 out of 160 have had 2 shots. The last 10 or so went to Raynell Medical, and we still have a few on the list that Raynell said as soon as we get to them, they have to come to us. When I say get to them, the vaccine, they have to go get it. And I'm not gonna make anybody take a sick day for that. So if you didn't get your shot, I'm gonna say, Mr. Angel, I'll get you a sub, just go. I'm not gonna get into that to make you take a sick day. So I want people to feel comfortable to get that done. So we're trying to work with them. That's the long answer for you.
Well, I think, and I've told you before, the problem I have is we've got kids in 11th and 12th grade that are failing.
I agree.
If we fail those kids, I'm afraid they won't come back to school.
You're not wrong. I'm concerned about that too. That's why I need to get them back to school.
And on the other hand, we've got parents, grandparents that are raising kids, and they're scared for those kids to come back to school and bring something to them. But if those kids have internet access, we can take care of it.
Yes.
So,
One
that's
of
my
the
case.
questions, oh, I'm sorry, Ron.
Go ahead.
One of the questions that I keep getting is how are you gonna socially distance?
The best we can.
And how you gonna socially distance with everybody in a full class?
I'll make you a copy before you go. This is the CDC guideline for schools, not the general population. And it says this is what schools need to do. Schools need to have the ability to adhere to the following mitigations. Consistent or correct use of masks. Number 2, social distancing to the extent possible. If anybody puts a number in front of that, you could go with 6 feet, maybe 12 feet's better. I don't know, but when you play sports, you're not socially distancing. But when you're in the classroom, you can control the social distancing with all those protective barriers we've given people. I think we have more PPE supplies than that. We have plenty to, we're giving people masks, this stuff, the shields, and now we spray down the classrooms. I'm just gonna say to that, we're gonna do it to the extent possible. The next one is hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. The next one is cleaning and disinfection, and the last one is contact tracing. If you have, like all of us in this room have had the 2 shots. If you would get COVID right now or be around someone with COVID, you do not need a quarantine. If you don't have symptoms, then you can go back to work. I mean, these guidelines keep constantly changing, so I guess what I can say to you is this: we're doing it to the extent possible. I don't know what else to say, and I know that doesn't make you feel better, but I'm not gonna lie to people either. But people keep going to that 6-foot rule, and they do that at Walmart and the banks, and I say, no, they don't. Who enforces that at those places? They don't enforce it. I've seen people bringing 4 kids in there with them. Why is mom and dad bringing 4 kids to the grocery with them? They should just keep one at work, or at home with the kids, and one go shop. You're just putting your kid in that position to be around a bunch of people. So, but I understand it. But if you get really good internet access at home, we'll still work with you. But we're only going to have 2 options: go to school, or you better have good internet option, because 1 out of 4 kids are failing classes right now, and some are higher than that, and some just aren't even in school.
I agree.
Yeah.
We have been told since last February, follow the science. This school system has followed the science. The science has changed, and it is going to continue to change. We will still continue, I'm sure, with your recommendation to follow the science. And it's also, I think, important to note that there are school systems all over the state. Wood County went back full-time Monday, all students. Greenbrier Elementary schools have gone full-time 5 days a week since September, no issues. Mon County voted the other night to go back full-time, and there's counties all over the state doing this. But I think the bottom line is we all have superiors, and our superiors are in Charleston. 6 weeks ago, they pushed us very strongly to go back 4 to 5 days a week, did they not, Mr. Wardle?
Correct.
They pushed us very hard. They did give us a second option to continue the approach we'd been doing all year for a period of time. And I think we decided we were going to stay with that option because we wanted to get more of our staff vaccinated. We wanted to evaluate and watch the numbers go down, and they have done that. And so we have gone with that, what we consider a safer option, for the last 5 or 6 weeks. But the state board, there were some counties who rebelled against them, and they got tapped pretty hard because of what they did. We all have superiors, and we've got superiors in Charleston. And the people at the West Virginia Department of Education has a superior, it's called the governor of the state. So we all have to follow that, and we're following science. And so I also want to say, and I've said this to many of you before, we also need to ask some questions about those kids who are in homes that are becoming more depressed. Suicide rates are up all over the country. Mental health, depression. Kids need interaction. And we all know that there are kids who are in less than desirable situations. We don't have our social workers and our guidance counselors and our teachers seeing to those kids and helping them like we have in the past. So, you know, we also need to ask, what are we going to do for those large number of kids that we have who are experiencing a lot of problems by not being in school? And with all the precautions we take, CDC says school is a safe environment to have them. And that's what the CDC said the other day on TV. I watched it verbatim. So I I don't envy you in your decisions, Mr. Warble, but rest assured, we board members getting all kinds of calls too. We're gonna work on this together. We're gonna follow the science, and we'll do the very best job we can for our students, and so we'll talk more about that next week.
Well, to end on a real positive with everything is last night on Metro News, you have two athletes on our girls basketball team, Pavant and Isaacs, right, Taylor and Gavin. 2 out of 4 are from our county on the same basketball team with McDonald athletes, submission by Mr. Chad Metter. And I called Chad and I said, I'm proud of you, Coach, for just submitting those student athletes. Because part of it isn't the athletes, it has to be the coach taking the time to submit that letter. And so that's pretty cool that we have someone in our system who's also helping us with vaccines and guiding me at DHHR. But I said, Chad, I just want to say thank you, because I know as a coach you have to submit that. But I also know that the parents and those kids really appreciate that well. So that's a very positive in our county amidst all this drama, we'll call it drama, with COVID and the pandemic. So. And I think Coach is also excited to, he was concerned, he was like, we're going to school, aren't we? Because I got to get practice in. You know, all the coaches are saying that right now. So long story short, basketball starts up, so I think we're playing next Wednesday night. So we're going to squeeze in the winter sports and then go with the spring. So I think we'll get some sense of normalcy.
Vice President Farley, you are on.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. The time is now 12:02.
This meeting stands adjourned, and thank all of y'all, everybody here. There wasn't a single question you all didn't field and answer, and so, Mr. Warble, you and your staff very well prepared in this work session.